I say TGIF and a good morning to all y'all. I'm Rayford Brown.
And I'm Lee Barrows.
And Kelly is not here today. She's under the weather right now, so it's she better be getting better real fast.
Why? I mean, we want her to get better, but what's your question?
She loves Super Bowl. She's got to watch that thing.
She'll be good.
And she can't be sick during Super Bowl. I mean, good gracious.
That's true.
Oh, my God, that would be a sin. That would be a major medical emergency, wouldn't it? Just kidding, Kelly. Hope you're getting better.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah, and I'm sure Robin's taking good care of her this morning, right?
Yeah. Okay.
We've
I don't see him cooking breakfast.
I don't see her eating breakfast either this morning.
No, bless her.
Today we got a special show here on Live and Local Real Talk, and coming up here in just a few minutes, we're going to be visited by a couple of gentlemen.
Yes.
And one of them I know fairly well, though I learn more about him every time we talk with him. But it's one of those things. It's a interesting gentleman. And he and I have been talking for the past couple of weeks about a situation here in Eastern North Carolina. And I had the chance last night to have a conversation with the other gentleman and John at the same time via telephone. And the both of them going in here this morning very shortly. And when we get on the air with them, I probably am not going to take any calls unless it's somebody that he knows that we know will be calling in. Right. I don't know that that's going to be happening. So if you've got something you want to say this morning, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let your fingers do the walking, and then you can start talking because we've got a few minutes until they get here. How's that sound?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's see what else we got cooking here this morning.
Well, first of all, let's say, my headphones just kicked in. Congratulations to Dr.
Yes,
who was
administrator for quite a while, right?
Yes, he's been in charge of academics.
Yeah, and he actually started his career there as a student at Richlands High.
Richlands High School, so yes, he did.
He's a homegrown boy. That's good.
Yes, he is.
I like that type of maneuvering. That's good.
He has promised that he's going to work with us to do a Onslow County School Spotlight once a month with us here on the radio. Excellent. And let us know what's happening in the public schools. And congratulations, the right choice. There were 16 applicants for the job, and they chose Dr. Barnes, and it was a 6-1 vote. Yeah. The board member Angie Todd voted nay.
So why?
The others voted.
Any reasoning, or just said
no reason? Just no.
Oh, okay, so it's just for general principles. I'm not going to support anything the rest of y'all do.
But when they announced when the vote was taken and he was voted in, the room erupted.
From what I heard yesterday, he's well liked, as we learned about Dr. Collins when he came up for that position 6 years ago. I think.
Right.
Good gracious, it's been a fast, short 6 years.
It has flown.
And he was the man for the job at the time, and he grabbed that bull by the horns and threw the sucker to the ground and had steak.
Right. Well, when mutual friend of ours, Pete, had brought down the Air Force drill team, color guard, and they performed at the county schools here in Onslow, Carteret, and Craven too. That's when I first met Dr. Barnes. It was instant friends. He is so likable. Yeah. And I've talked to him here and there at different functions. And
apparently the staff likes him too, those who have worked with him.
Yes.
Around him.
I mean, the whole room was mosely staff, and they just erupted in applause. Yeah. And congratulations, Dr. Barnes. And we look forward to having you on the show.
Okay. And Dr. Collins, he's got until the 1st of March. I think that 1 March is going to be his actual last day.
Yes.
And so it's going to be interesting. And I'm going to get him in here. I'd like to talk with Dr. Barnes again. I think maybe I'll talk to him in advance, but maybe right after he's out, and let's see what he can see for the future.
Yes.
Dr. Collins.
Yes.
I want to see what he foresees for the future, and let's just talk.
Yeah, that man right there, I highly respect, and I just think the world of too, and I think he's done a fantastic job job
The
with
T
bringing the
word
school.
keeps coming to mind with
Yes.
him every time. Transparent.
Yes.
No problem.
Yes. I thought you were going to say trains. Isn't he into trains? Did he say he was into trains? Maybe I'm thinking of someone. But you know
that
what?
was that guy that used to jump trains all the time, a hobo.
Remember last week or the week before when I said New Hanover County had voted in a new superintendent? His name was Chris Barnes also.
Oh, Lord of mercy.
See, so we got some competition. Our Dr. Barnes, take him down.
Yeah. Oslo County deputies arrested a man on multiple felony charges after an attempted robbery this week. Earlier on Tuesday, 2 women told the officers that a man had followed them from their doctor's office and tried to get into their truck. When they stopped, the doors were locked, and he was trying to beat the glass in or something. The victims described the man's vehicle. When deputies got there, the officers spotted it, gave chase, reaching speeds of almost 80 miles per hour out there on Highway 24. When they managed to get him grounded, they were assisted by Swansboro police, and they all of them took the guy into custody. His name is Andre Anderson Darival. I'll give that maybe a word. He's 24 years old, from Jacksonville. He faces a host of charges. He's chilling his heels in the Onslow County Detention Center. He has no bond available. Don't know what his story is, but whatever. Back in 2020, on 420, you got that? On 420, he was arrested on a charge of selling narcotics. He was convicted and placed on probation. How do you get probation for being on for selling drugs? That part doesn't make any sense to me. Well, the we're looking at a missing plane up in Alaska as well. One was coming into the airport there, blizzard type conditions, and they were trying to remove snow from the runway, and the plane was going to circle for a bit, and then the plane just disappeared from radar, and that was that. So we got 2 gentlemen walking in the driveway.
Well, good, very good, very good.
It doesn't look like either is heavily armed, so that's good. But those kinds of things. My goodness gracious, another plane, and then the comments, online stuff, the garbage, the Bravo Sierra out there coming from so many of the distraught politicians, those on the left-leaning side of the aisle. They are just so, beside themselves. They can't stand it.
Right.
They're going crazy.
Right.
And it's all Trump's fault. Every bit of it is Trump's fault. He's crashing planes. Because of him, the FAA doesn't have enough people to even man the anything that's going on.
Well, let me change seats real quick, and I'll tell you something.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, he's at fault. Hillary Clinton has jumped on board that train. Whatever. The FAA has been down 1,000 people for months. Why? Because they could not find anybody. They could find plenty of people who were qualified, but according to the FAA's rules and regulations, they couldn't find enough people to fit the narrative that was required.
Right.
They had to be 5 feet 4.5 inches tall, no taller, no shorter. That's just the way it was. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah.
I got to get your mic potted up. Okay, now you're
right. Okay. Interesting tweet war yesterday on X.
Twits.
Hillary. Yeah, she's a twit.
Oh, twit.
Hillary. You know who I'm talking about, Hillary Clinton. She tweeted, U.S. airlines had gone 16 years without fatal crashes. Then MAGA fired the FAA chief, gutted the Aviation Security Advisory Committee, and threatened air traffic controllers with layoffs. Now there have been 2 fatal crashes.
I wish you'd get her facts straight at least.
Hope your unvetted 22-year-olds fix things fast. And so our Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, replied to her tweet on X. And he says, I know you're lashing out because Dodge is uncovering your family's obscene grifting via USA, but I won't let you lie and distort facts. The FAA administrator announced he resigned over a month before Trump took office, and the air traffic controllers were always exempt from Trump's civil service buyouts. The previous administration shamelessly used US DOT as a slush fund for the Green New scam, throwing away money and resources on wasteful environmental and social justice projects rather than updating our nation's antiquated air traffic control systems and other critical infrastructure. I'm returning this department to its mission of safety.
God, I wish I need a translator to tell me what he said.
Got into a Twitter war last night. I'm like, whoa.
You cannot get into that kind of a contest. When you start back and forth, you're going to get it all over yourself.
Yes.
Because the wind's going to be blowing.
Oh, he slapped it on her.
I have a Marine and a federal agent to my left. It's all in one person, and he reads me loud and clear.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
As in Lima Charlie.
Well, it's frightening too to read you at all.
Scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he smiled immediately. Anyway, well, welcome aboard, John Legato. He's been in here once or twice over the last 10, 12 years. God knows.
Times 12.
We've been knowing each other since, what, 2014 or so?
Might have been before that.
Wow. I didn't ever go into that club that you used to run, did I?
Oh, please.
Tell secrets.
No, I don't go north of the Mason-Dixon line. They don't like me up there.
I've actually had people challenge me on that. I think a guy called here last time saying, how would the FBI allow you to? You know, when I asked the same question when
Don't throw me into this briar patch.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Anyway, John Legato's in here. We're not going to talk about his career with the FBI or his time with the Marine Corps or his time flying airplanes and didn't know where he was part of the time. We're not going to talk.
Well, I'm glad that you hit the high points anyway.
And of course, he's a well-known author. Like I said, I got to know you. It's been a while. My God, this is 2025 already. What happened?
Well, I don't know. I've been asking myself that lately with the arthritis and.
Yeah, I talked to my medical provider yesterday about that. She said, "Hey, nothing you can do.
Nothing you can do about it.
Just work it out. Take medicine for the pain." I said, "Well, I'd rather work it out." So, seems to be working. A couple of things that I'm doing. But anyway, yeah, John's retired Fed. He was never a bureaucrat up there. You were not one of those higher ups that you hated.
I would get hives if I spent too much time in the office.
So this is the kind of gentleman we're dealing with. He was also did a little bit of a stint in that place called Vietnam. In this community, I hope everybody is familiar with this thing we call it the Tet Offensive. It's the battle for Hue City.
Yeah.
And John was smack dab in the middle of it, as he's always in the middle of something.
Please. Did my wife call you or something?
I got your phone tap. But he's a real American. Though he doesn't sound like it sometimes. He talks Philly.
How you doing?
How you doing? Yeah. Is that any better?
No.
I'm working
Can I
on
ask you, Northerners, like people from New Jersey up north, do they spell chairman CHAIRMAN? Is that the New Jersey way to spell chairman?
Chairman?
Yeah.
Forget about it. I want some coffee. Water.
Anyway, we've been talking for the last couple of weeks or so about a situation here in Eastern North Carolina. I'm a big supporter of the criminal justice system. Sometimes the criminal justice system is when over the years, and every now and then you see it, and I have to term some of it the criminal injustice system. And if half of what you have told me about a certain situation is true, which I'm sure that 115% is true, then we got a real issue.
We do.
We've got a real issue. But you support law enforcement like I do. We believe in the system, but we don't believe in the people who misuse intentionally, I'm afraid, at times, and sometimes out of stupidity.
Well, arrogant stupidity, but we all recruit from the human race, and that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, what's the alternative? AI? Fake intelligence?
No, but every once in a while, the system train wrecks. It gets off the rails so bad, and it won't go back on. What I've noticed about bureaucrats is that they will rarely admit a mistake. This thing with the Navy, with the medals, and we presented evidence to
That's
them.
another one we're going to be talking about soon, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. So, but they won't admit it. So you send them facts, and people tell them, "Hey, this is wrong." They will never. They dig in deeper and go for the throat. They play either a delay game and wait for you to die or give up, or they go on the counterattack. But they would never say, "Geez, we were wrong about that." And you gave us the evidence to show that we were wrong. You gave us our own documents.
Yeah. It's in black and white, but we're going to ignore that part. We'll make it up as we go along. And how dare you? How dare you challenge me? You got that, didn't you?
Well, you would not believe the arrogance of the Navy, and sometimes the criminal, some elected officials that feel that they can't be touched. And
you had a few of those up in Ohio one time, didn't you?
Yeah,
over 8 years.
Please.
You touched them. The gentleman that we're talking about here, who's in the center of this, is one of 144, at least 144 by the same name in North Carolina, and that's just the ones that I could check. Kevin Smith. What sort of I thought John Smith was a common name. Kevin Smith in North Carolina. There are a bunch of him.
Yeah, I guess so. You looked it up.
I did,
and of course Kevin would know too. He was in the middle of a bunch of Kevin Smiths.
Yeah. So, John, let's let you start out here and set the stage here. It started 8 or 9, 10 years ago, right? Some period of time ago.
Was it 2015 or
2016?
2016
is when it started for me.
Okay, for you.
Yeah.
So it predates you.
The timeline gets a little squishy.
Okay.
In some things, but as far as I'm concerned, it started in 2016.
Okay. So when it started with you in 2016, 9 years ago or so, what happened? How'd you get involved? And so nobody knows anything because I haven't shared anything with anyone. So we're going to start from scratch because we got 2 hours to go.
What you are about to hear should make you mad and shock you. That's all I'll say.
Well, let's see. Good place to start. In April of 2016, I responded to a personal ad on Craigslist and was supposed to talk to somebody for a little while, was supposed to meet there, met. When we met, decided I was not in spending any more time with this person because as often happens with online dating, the pictures did not match what arrived.
Go figure.
But also this person appeared to be under the influence of, we were supposed to meet like at a picnic shelter close to where she lived, talk. Mm-hmm. I pulled up and she immediately hopped right into my vehicle and I told her to get out and go away. Mm-hmm. And I have trouble with my right hip and have for years. And so I don't sit on my wallet. When I get in the car, I take my wallet out, set it in the center console, which
my doctor told me to do that.
Yeah. My chiropractor told me to do that.
So that's the doctor that I had.
Yeah.
That's a chiropractor.
But she snatched my wallet up and jumped right out of the car and took off running.
Oh, wow.
I followed her and went to the trailer she ran to and knocked on the door. Beat on the door. Oh, I forgot to mention, when I told her to get out, she told me she was an undercover cop and her backup was coming to arrest me. When I said, I don't know if you've ever met any police officers, but this is totally not how they work. Also, full disclosure, she's 5 foot tall and weighed about like 95 pounds or something.
Crack was her favorite.
Actually, it was heroin, to my understanding.
Okay.
When I informed her that no, they're not, so go away, that's when she jumped out with my wallet. So I go to the door, start knocking on the door and saying, look, give me my wallet back or I'm calling the actual police. And after a couple minutes of literally jumping up in the air to look at me through the window in the middle of the door, she opens the door and I say, where's my wallet? She points off to the side. I go off to the side, pick up my wallet, leave.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I was concerned, that was the end of it.
So you committed robbery.
Well, as far as I was concerned, this was the end of it, of that situation. December of 2018.
2.5 years later?
Of 2016. I'm sorry.
Okay.
December of 2016. A person I actually knew contacted me and called me and wanted to meet with me. I went to go see them, and there were police officers there when I got there. They informed me these were actual police officers, but they informed me they were looking for somebody who had committed a series of crimes. I informed them that I was not a person who had committed a series of crimes, and I left. The next morning, they showed up at my house and arrested me initially, and this was very confusing to me. They initially arrested me and charged me with, it was 2 mornings later they showed up at my house. They told me that they were arresting me for witness intimidation and solicitation of prostitution, which very much confused me. Then, they took me to the jail. I was in the jail for 45 minutes. John was on his way to bond me out when they took me back up to the magistrate and charged me with first-degree rape, robbery, common law robbery and first-degree rape, and gave me $1 million bond.
Was it assault too, right?
Not in that case. That was all I was ever charged with in that case. Then the next morning, they took me in, and the alleged offense had occurred in October, 2 months before my arrest.
No, that was
The first charge, the first thing they charged me with had allegedly occurred in
I
October.
thought you said it was April. Would you?
Totally different. This is a totally different situation. You may need a flow chart and you may want to take notes.
Okay.
Which I knew nothing about, and when they charged me, all it had on my warrant was a date, an alleged offense, and actually it wasn't even a warrant, and a set of initials.
Let me try to sum it up, and then you can take it over chronologically, because I think people are wondering what's going on here. You were arrested for multiple first-degree rapes,
Robberies,
assaults,
violent assaults,
assault
with a deadly weapon,
assault with a deadly weapon,
serious bodily injury.
and you spent almost 6 years in jail, not prison. You were never indicted till what?
I was never indicted in Craven County until December of 2022.
So you spent a lot of years in jail.
Yes.
You did not get a speedy trial, which we'll get into. And at the conclusion of all that, you spent all that time in jail. The charges were dropped except one misdemeanor, like a traffic ticket, because one of the alleged victims,
The one from April 2016, claimed I grabbed her shirt as she was jumping out of the
to
car.
get his wallet. So you spent almost 6 years in jail, and you got no convictions. In fact, no jury trial.
Did you ever go to trial?
We started to go to trial.
I mean, other than district court, that's just generally
We-
probable
we-
cause hearings or whatever.
But
right?
we didn't even, we
Never got that
that's-
far.
Yeah, we'll get to the issue of probable cause hearings later, because I never had one of those, even though state law says that
But
you're
you
supposed
did
to.
have a first appearance, though, right?
I had a first appearance.
Okay.
Come to find out that I was eventually charged in 4 cases. Just coincidentally, all 4 of those people happened to be on the same block in the Creighton County Jail at the time that they started talking to the lead investigator.
They were in jail.
They were in jail.
What charges were they in jail?
Oh, dear God. Let's see. One of them was in jail for robbing a woman at gunpoint and threatening to shoot her baby if she didn't turn over her stuff, and possession of methamphetamines, possession of a concealed weapon, possession of drug paraphernalia was what she was in jail for that time. 2 of them were in jail for selling heroin. No, one of them was in jail for selling meth. The other one was in jail for selling heroin and a string of misdemeanors.
Okay. Were they ever convicted of these charges, or do you know?
All of their charges were either the one with the charges for the robbery charge and all had her charges dismissed.
She had while she was in jail, she told how bad you were,
Yes.
and then her charges were dropped.
Yes. Well, that set of charges.
Yeah.
During the time I was in jail, all of them who got out of jail while I was in jail succeeded in getting back in jail, sometimes multiple times.
Oh, that's normal. Frequent flyers.
Well, it's beyond frequent flyers.
Kevin, let me ask you a question. At one point, they said all the alleged victims didn't know each other, right?
That was claimed, yes.
But you have other information, right?
Well, the lead investigator in the case claimed that he had gotten all their phone records and checked, and they'd never called each other, which is interesting because the first 2 people I was charged with were sharing a hotel room when I was arrested.
They didn't need to call each other.
So because apparently at one point the prosecutor had said, "Can you prove to me that these people don't know each other?" And so he told the prosecutor, "Well, I pulled all their phone records and none of them have ever called each other." One of them we know for sure, he was using her mother's phone number as her phone number. And
The investigator had a different number.
had the incorrect phone number for that person and used that on everything he ever did involved in it. But at the same time, these are people, which is common with people who, every single one of them was a drug dealer of some sort.
Hookers?
Honestly, I don't think any of them have ever been arrested for that.
Okay.
They have all been arrested for robberies, drug selling, drug trafficking, but none of them have ever had a prostitution charge that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of looking done.
Kevin, let me interrupt you here. Why that's so important to the people listening is if they didn't know each other, that strengthens the case.
It does.
Right.
So, like, in other words, they can say they didn't know each other, but they all came to accuse you.
You know, the way they did it,
Well-
they were independently.
Right.
Right. Even if that were true, the fact that they were all on the same cell block in the jail where
Coincidence.
at the time I was arrested, the women in Creighton County Jail, I think, were out of their cells in what they call the common area for something like 13 or 14 hours a day anyway. 2 of them were cellmates. They did have one person who tried to come forward with an accusation, but her stories didn't match. B, she sent a note to the lead investigator specifically saying she'd already been talking to one of the other victims. And then when she did talk to the lead investigator, her story was contradicted by a police report that had been filed the same night that she was claiming this had occurred. But I mean, her story changed. I actually met that person in the jail at one point. And if you ever want to meet a crazy person, she was a crazy person. I had already been informed by my lawyer that this person was like, because my lawyer had seen this person in court and it was just like, that person is nuts.
But so now the investigator that was working this case, same guy all the time?
Mike Sawyer.
Okay. He was with the sheriff's office.
Creighton County Sheriff's Department.
And he was working your case. And he's the one that brought the charges? Were they warrants? Did they go get
the two cases I was charged in Creighton County, even though I was already in the jail on the original misdemeanor charges, which were eventually dismissed.
Pause. You were in jail on misdemeanor charges?
They arrested me for the witness intimidation and the initial charge of solicitation of prostitution, but those charges were eventually charges were dismissed.
You were in jail for that, and you were under bond for that?
Yes.
How much bond?
$5,000?
The
original bond,
$7,500.
$7,500.
Well, that's not our bond.
They set the $1 million when they took me in front of the magistrate and set the $1 million bond. I actually said because this magistrate, which everybody thinks, and even some of the police officers, when I asked them about the amount of my bond, well, the magistrate asks about like your ties to the community and what finances you have available and that sort of thing. And I said, no, they didn't. And there's a form you're supposed to fill out that they didn't do any of that. But also, I was arrested without warrant, which usually if you're arrested without warrant, that means that the police officer saw you commit a crime. He knows you have just committed a crime. He arrests you without a warrant. Then he goes to the magistrate and seeks a warrant and has to justify to the magistrate. And ordinarily, even if they arrested you without warrant, he's still supposed to fill out an affidavit justifying the warrant.
Sure.
Unless that was done and they never put it in the case file, that was not done. I was arrested without warrant. I was taken in front of the magistrate, and the magistrate literally just said, I'm giving you $1 million bond. When I said, what?
Yeah, under certain circumstances, they can't arrest you without a warrant if it's immediate flight risk in the officer's mind or yada, 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 yada. You weren't that kind of a person, right?
No.
You were there. They knew who you were.
Yes.
You weren't going to run on them, but no, nothing like that. You weren't a drug dealer, not drug trafficker. Okay.
But you brought up an interesting point. Why don't you give your background? I mean, people
I was going to get there.
At the time I was arrested, I had a top secret security clearance and was working for the Department of Defense. I had previously been a school teacher, which the newspapers made a big deal about at the time of my arrest, but owned a house. I had lived in the area 20 years.
Yeah. No arrest.
No previous criminal record. Though the magistrate didn't know that. We found out later. One of the things that was put in my discovery was a printout that had been provided apparently to the magistrate. I'm assuming didn't actually read it closely. It was a criminal record about 4 pages long in fine print of just rows and rows of offenses.
Well, I saw that too.
Yeah, it was
144 times.
It was every single Kevin Smith and every crime that had ever been committed by a person named Kevin Smith going back to 1982, which I'm assuming was as far back as computer records of crimes went at the time.
Let's stop there. I mean, okay, this issue, if true, is an amazing miscarriage. So they take a bunch of in North Carolina that have arrest records and I think rate for check.
144.
144. And they use that basically to keep you in jail, not prison. And we'll explain that later. Because you are a danger to society. Now, there's 2 reasons.
Or a flight risk.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's 2 reasons that they could keep you in jail. If you're a flight risk, you are a danger to community. The problem with using them is that they couldn't prove you were a danger
There was one. I had an expired registration on a vehicle
Oh, that should do it.
in 1992. That was that was me, and that was on that list. But that was it.
Well, but there's a presumption of innocence. You had no record. So in other words, if a magistrate saw that you were a criminal, then he can justify it. But if you had no record and you weren't a flight risk, and they did up to $5 million in bonds during that period, and they based it on somebody else, if that's just true, this is one of the, and I don't know if it is, Kevin, a major miscarriage of justice. I
But,
mean, when you think of it.
you know, I can not understand, but I can appreciate a magistrate going through, I don't know how many cases in Craven County that on that particular day that the officer comes in with, hey, this is Kevin Smith and he's committed all these crimes. Here's a printout of his record, yada, 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 yada. But the officer, before you ever do that, you better know what you're doing. You better have that correct information.
Well, and then the other issue with it, which the prosecutor's office wanted me to take a pre-indictment plea, which is an unusual thing. But in attempting to convince I did not want my father to spend his money on my problems.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a court-appointed lawyer for most of this issue. Because to be honest with you, and I think this is an incorrect assumption that a lot of people make, I know I didn't do this stuff, and that's going to, as soon as I go to court,
should be good, right?
I'm going to be fine. And my first court-appointed lawyer was a good lawyer. He actually convinced the prosecutor to turn over pre-indictment discovery. So we got a lot of stuff. We didn't get everything, but we got a lot of stuff then. So I found out what the accusations actually were, which I didn't even know before that. In Craven County, they had taken me in front of the magistrate, given me the $1 million bond. The next day, they took me in front of the magistrate, gave me another $1 million bond with the same thing: arrested without a warrant, first degree rape, common law robbery. That one did not even have a date of offense on it. It literally said the entire month of December of 2015. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with. I during the course of all this, I became incredibly familiar with the laws of the state of North Carolina. I mean, to the extent where I actually ended up teaching veteran police officers and even a state trooper about the laws of the state of North Carolina, where they argued with me about it, and then they Googled it and had to concede that they were just going on what they'd heard. But
Unfortunately, that happens a lot.
That happens a lot, yes. But I mean, in North Carolina, for it to be first degree sexual assault or first degree rape, there's three things that could make it that. It could be a group where there's more than one person involved in the assault. It could be a deadly weapon was either used or threatened to be used, or there could be serious bodily injuries inflicted. Well, when we got the actual statements from the two people in Craven County, one didn't even remember when exactly. That was the one where it was sometime in December of 2015. Didn't remember exactly when in 2015. Did know a location.
When did you file the complaint?
Well, that gets a little squishy because remember I told you that they were looking for somebody involved in a series of assaults. Mm-hmm. According to Mike Sawyer's report that he put in his case file, she didn't say anything about it until the day after I was arrested. In fact,
sometimes that happens, but did any of these victims, or did the cops ever get a rape kit done?
There was only one. Mm-hmm. And to this day, it's never been processed.
Oh, really?
Yes. And that would be Mike Sawyer's fault as well. He certainly appears to have ensured that it never did get processed, mm-hmm. which was the other, if you're arrested on a felony in North Carolina, this was one of the last things I actually learned. If you're arrested on a felony in North Carolina, they swab you for DNA right there when you're arrested.
They do today. Yes.
But so, I thought they'd swabbed my DNA. They're going to get DNA results. I'm going to be out of here. At the very least, if no other evidence clears me, I know enough about DNA to know that's going to clear me. The thing is when they swab you, when they first arrest you like that, if you've never been convicted of a felony in North Carolina, that swab gets thrown away. There's a separate swab set that they're supposed to do on you for a sexual assault that then gets sent to the state lab. They never did that on me. So that in neither of the two cases in Craven County, where I was charged, neither of those people in this what we initially got that we thought was their statement, neither of them alleged any of the three things that would be required for it to be first degree. Well, I mean, actually, if one of them's story had been true, it would have been first degree because they would have looked like they'd been in an unrestrained front end collision, strangled into unconsciousness 4 times. Well, I guess technically the bar I supposedly tore off the window and beat them with probably could have counted as a deadly weapon. But that person didn't remember when exactly it happened, never made a report to the police, and never sought medical treatment for what had allegedly occurred.
Yeah,
Also, they did name a location, and would you like to know what aren't on the windows?
Bars, yeah.
Bars. And I have it on good authority from a friend of mine who is a professional welder and has been his whole life, that you could hook a forklift to a bar on a window and try to drive off with it. You might tear out the window frame, but you won't break the bar off of the other bars. So unless I was the Incredible Hulk, that statement in and of itself should have caused someone to go, there's no way this is true.
This is, again, put it in context in terms of these were things they were accusing you of, beating somebody with a bar. And they went to a hospital. I think one of the victims went to a hospital, and none of that happened. And one went to a hospital in Virginia. We'll get to that. But what I'm saying is, what you're saying is they accused you of this stuff that never happened. It was never proved it happened.
And no proof of it?
Actually, you could actually say in 2 of the cases there was proof it didn't happen.
Okay.
Which Mike Sawyer was in possession of eventually. I'll be honest with you. I think when I was arrested, I think he had a very solid case on one of the cases in Onslow County. But
he's Craven County.
Yeah, but the person that was talking to him was in the Craven County jail.
Exactly.
That's the thing you have to remember is all these people are in that jail and they're all talking to this one detective who thinks he's got a case that's going to make him famous.
All right. Let's catch up.
Yeah.
You've had 3 alleged victims, 2 in Craven, 1 in Onslow. The detective from Craven County basically prosecuted the case, testified, correct me if I'm wrong, in Onslow County, right? Eventually. So, but you have 3 alleged victims. 2 in Craven, 1 in Onslow. And the charges were similar in all 3, right?
Well, it was actually eventually 4 cases. You always have a hard time remembering that 4th one because the 4th one was the one that later said if they called her to testify, she would testify that she'd never spoken to Mike Sawyer in her life. Which
that was an Onslow case?
That was an Onslow case. I was charged in Onslow County. That, like I said, this gets really complicated and it's hard to decide how to go through this. But in all 4 of these cases, there were 2 cases where the people couldn't remember when exactly it happened. One who couldn't remember where exactly it happened. Was very, very, there was the 4th case they charged me in. If you actually read through it, you would come to the conclusion that there was actually no way to prove it did happen and no way to prove it didn't happen, because the accusation was so vague that, it's like, I mean, this one was supposed to have occurred sometime in August or September of 2016.
Okay. You're in jail.
Mm-hmm.
You're awaiting some kind of a court proceeding, justice to be served, right?
Mm-hmm.
These 4 individuals, they're in the same jail
Mm-hmm.
during this time while you were in jail.
Yes.
What were they in jail for?
Selling robbery, armed robbery. These are the most serious charges each of them faced: armed robbery, selling methamphetamine, selling heroin, and trafficking in heroin. That's what they were in jail for at the time they made the accusations.
Yeah. Okay. So they were in jail. Law enforcement put them in the jailhouse
Mm-hmm.
because law enforcement figured that they had committed these crimes.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world would you have, as a different law enforcement officer, how would you have treated these individuals? As good sources, as good?
In the federal system,
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that we have to prove on warrants is reliability of the witness.
You better be doing that in the state court too.
You have to put in the warrant if the person was reliable, how many times they were reliable. Even if it was unknown reliability, you had to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot put 100 Kevin Smiths in an affidavit for a bond, and you cannot work. Now, I've worked drug dealers, informants, under very strict supervision. Federally, like if they went out and made a buy, I would search them at a spot
Beforehand and after.
beforehand, follow them to the place, watch them come out. I mean, and these are things in federal, which is why federal rarely loses a case. But it seemed that, and I don't know this, Kevin, you would know it much better than me, that these informants were used, and what would the term be? Loosely, or with, how would you describe
How were they treated by the judicial system as reliable sources?
Okay, all right. In the first 2 cases where I was charged, one person eventually got probation for their drug dealing charges. Another one, which they were in the Craven County jail for selling drugs. The drug dealing charges were eventually dismissed. However, they'd already been indicted in Carteret County for a series of break-ins to homes. They were convicted on that, but I think they pled down to a single charge and did get 4 years in prison for that. However, they also had a level 2 trafficking charge in Carteret County that they hadn't been indicted on yet, and that one was dismissed. Which the level 2 trafficking was the most serious charge that they actually were facing, but they hadn't been indicted on that yet. Now the one from the first case I was charged in for Onslow County, which was the one who had stolen my wallet. As far as I know, all of her criminal charges that were pending against her at the time of my arrest were dismissed.
Have you, did anything come out that your lawyers may have learned, that you learned, that it was these individuals who made the claims against you that had been arrested for other offenses? Did it ever come out that any of them were asked, or did they tell, or that they were, in exchange for their testimony against you, the charges would be reduced or dismissed? Did any of that ever come out?
Nothing was turned over to the defense to that
Did the
effect.
defense ever ask?
We did. but there were a lot of things the defense asked for that either we did not get for an extremely long time or that we never got.
Okay, so when did you get to see the judge?
Well, I had a bond reduction hearing after a year and a half.
So you were in jail for 18 months with that, with what, how much bond? $5 million bond?
Oh no, I had a bond reduction. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I had a bond reduction hearing after 2.5 years, not a year and a half.
Okay. So how much was the original bond that you had?
Well, my bond in Craven County was originally $2 million, and the bond they set for my charges in Onslow County was $3 million. But all of that was set by magistrates in Craven County because the warrants were served.
Excuse me.
The warrants were served on me in the Craven County jail, so they took me in front of a Craven County magistrate. I had, so my $2 million bond in Craven County was reduced to $1 million, which brought my total bond amount down to $4 million.
Okay, so you didn't have $4 million to put up.
No, I didn't have $1 million to put up. I didn't have $100,000 to put up.
That's one of the constitutional amendments, excessive bond. But just recently in Charlotte, in June of 2024, a guy got arrested for homicide in Charlotte and got a $50,000 bond. OJ, who severed the head almost of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, had $1 million bond. So you have to be either a risk or a danger. And that the Eighth Amendment talks about excessive bail. Excessive bail shall not be required because around the principle that an accused is presumed innocent until found guilty. So that presumption, even though you had no arrest and you weren't convicted, that didn't apply in your case. And that you had family and employment ties to the community. You had that, right? Mm-hmm. If you're not able to furnish the bond amount, which you weren't allowed, so because it was excessive, you could not financially do it. And was there any possibility that you would flee? Those were the Eighth Amendment. Now there's 3 amendments of the Constitution. Let me just explain. I won't get deep into weeds here, but the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution basically allows the federal government to trump local government on, not everything, because the states have the 10th and 14th Amendments, but on civil rights cases. And the Supreme Court specifically mentioned the 6th and 8th Amendment that the federal government should trump. So there was a speedy under the 6th Amendment. And you never had a speedy trial.
Oh, never came close.
One of the things that the criteria is, did you request a speedy trial after almost 6 years?
Oh, long before 6 years had passed. But on the bond point, and to me, this is the most glaring example. Remember when R. Kelly was arrested in Florida? You know, the man who owned an $11 million jet and was a multimillionaire, owned like a $7 million house and all that. He was arrested on all those human trafficking charges and statutory rape charges in Florida. This was while I was in jail. He was given $1 million bond. To say that I was a little bit upset about that would be a minor understatement, but my bond was set excessively high. The delays to prosecution, which, the Supreme Court decided a long time ago that the criteria to determine if your right to a speedy trial has been violated is determined by a series of factors. It's called the Graham factors. And the first one is the length of the delay. And they actually say if it's more than a year after your arrest, then that fits the presumption of an excessive delay, which in Craven County, if you were arrested on a felony, you are not getting tried in under a year. So pretty much everybody.
Most of them don't stay in jail that long, though.
Right. Well, actually, a lot of them do.
A lot of them do.
The second factor is the reason for the delay. if there's been delays in lab testing, or there's been the prosecution can say we've had difficulty locating witnesses or something like that, then that gets taken into consideration. And, if the defense has been requesting continuances, that's a
Try to
factor.
find witnesses or something, whatever.
Right. The next is the effect of the delay. But the Supreme Court did mention in the Graham decision, if the delay, actually, I think the effect is the forceful one. If just the anxiety of awaiting trial. So this would not even be if you're sitting in jail, even if you're bonded out,
Sure.
These factors apply. But when we eventually did get around to having an actual motion filed in Craven County on this, it got filed in district court because I hadn't been indicted. I'm sorry. And this was not just a demand for a speedy trial. This was a actual request to dismiss based on speedy trial grounds. They continued the hearing on whether or not to dismiss for over a year.
So you had
in district court
multiple times that your attorney
under the
asked.
Graham factors, a delay of your trial of over a year is presumptively an excessive delay.
Mhm.
They delayed hearing my demand. I mean, this wasn't even filed until 5 years after I was arrested. The request to dismiss. They delayed even having a hearing on it for over a year. So if we'd filed it the day I was arrested, which would have been silly, but if to dismiss on lack of a speedy trial, according to the Supreme Court, by the time they got around to ruling on it, the delay would have been excessive.
The Speedy Trial Act, let me just read, in contrast, sets two clear limits, time limits. An information or indictment, you had neither, must follow 30 days within the 30 days of arrest, and a trial must begin within 70 days of these time limits. Now, and what you said is true. The Supreme Court passed Barker versus Wingo in 1972, which the Balancing Act, you said the four things.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Graham factors is excessive force. It's
Right.
Wingo.
This is Barker versus, this is the case. The Balancing Act is what you said, the length of the delay. And the length of the delay was through the roof. The reason for the delay, what was the reason for the delay?
I wouldn't take a plea.
You wouldn't take a plea.
That's literally.
That's not a reason for a delay.
That's not, but it's. I didn't find out this. The person I was initially charged with in Craven County,
Mhm.
and this, to get into the actual details of that case, on October the 16th, 2016, the staff of the Comfort Suites in James City, which is just outside of New Bern, called the police because they had found a highly intoxicated on some substance young lady wandering the halls of their hotel.
Mhm.
When the police arrived, the story she told then was that someone had broken into her hotel room and attacked her. A detective named Mike Sawyer showed up on that scene, and an uniformed detective. I literally only know that guy's last name, Arnold. We've never gotten anything else on that guy or from that guy other than the report he filled out that day. Sawyer stayed with her on the first floor, and he went up to the third floor and couldn't get into her room because her roommate was in the room with the door locked. When he eventually got in the room, he got the full name of the roommate, and he got the full name of the person downstairs that had originally called on. And he called in and had their names run and found out that they both had felony arrest warrants out of Carteret County. He goes downstairs to tell Sawyer this, and this is all from Arnold's report that he filled out. He goes downstairs to tell Sawyer this. Before he can tell Sawyer this, he says the girl has calmed down, says she doesn't want to pursue charges on this. So Arnold tells Sawyer, Well, whether she wants to pursue charges or not, we got to arrest both of them because they both have outstanding warrants out of Carteret County for drug dealing. So they were arrested. We have no clear explanation for why they remained in the Craven County Jail at that point because their charges were in Carteret County. They were never transferred to the Carteret County Jail. I do know that the Carteret County Jail suffers from a lot of overcrowding, and sometimes
They move prisoners around.
they keep them in the Craven County Jail because of overcrowding, and I think there was construction going on in the Carteret County Jail, so it's not in and of itself suspicious. The roommate that had the door locked and wouldn't let the police officer in until she may have finished flushing some stuff down the toilet, was the second accuser in Craven County.
Oh, really?
The one that, sometime in December of 2015, this guy attacked me too.
You're this guy.
I'm this guy.
Yeah.
Well, according to Mike Sawyer, I'm this guy. Because the other problem that we ran into, remember I said that according to their statements, this is all the stuff that happened. That was the written statements that were in the file that was turned over to us. When I had all 4 supposed to be written statements from the alleged victims, something started to look strange to me. I mean, the first thing I noticed was that they weren't signed. My first suspicion was, sometimes you'll have somebody who gives a statement to the police, but they're not putting their name on it until they get, maybe, am I going to get some consideration from the prosecutor? Give me something in writing from the prosecutor, and then I'll sign this. That was the first thing I thought. The next thing I thought was, God, these R's look really similar. So I sat all 4 of them side by side and eventually figured out that they were all in the same handwriting, which turns out to be Mike Sawyer's.
Handwriting analysis done?
Yeah. Well,
Did he admit it? Did he wrote them?
Yeah. He later would admit that they were his notes from his interviews. There are no recordings of any interviews he did with any of them except for the first alleged victim. There's stuff that was said which we didn't get that recording until 5.5 years after I was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
There is stuff that is said in the recording of the conversation that directly contradicts stuff that was in his notes, which his notes were a written narrative written in the first person, which I don't know anyone who takes notes of what a person is saying
those
to
are
them
not notes.
that's their notes, and you write I and me instead of she and her.
It's disgusting, but it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for an officer or someone in that capacity to write out a statement. Is this what occurred? In your own words?
Yeah.
And if it is, would you sign it? And those were not signed?
They were not signed.
They're not notes either.
They're not notes. He wrote a statement for
It's
them.
It's
and
a
for
work
some
of
reason,
fiction.
yeah.
John does that from time to time.
Yeah.
Not his old cop.
But
This is stranger than fiction.
This is way. I'm not confused, but we're gonna go around, and John, you know this case up one side and down the other. Before, I want to get to, how'd you get out of jail?
we eventually, the original assistant district attorney assigned to my case in Craven County,
I saw myself assistant district attorney.
Yeah.
In ADA. Okay.
was retiring. And her last act the day she retired was to unsecure my bond in Craven County. That got me transferred to the Onslow County Jail
Okay.
because I still had a $3 million Onslow County, even though it was set by a
Sure,
Craven County
but-
magistrate.
And the reason they did that, according to you, is they thought you had they had a stronger case in Onslow than Craven. So they wanted you to go to Onslow and get convicted. So you can say,
Well, that was at least hypothetically why she did it. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I think the original ADA on my case in Craven County had absolutely no desire to try my case. I mean, she tried multiple murder cases that happened after my arrest. That ADA tried those cases. There was one that happened, God, it happened a year after I was arrested. And she took that case to trial 2 years I'm still sitting in the Craven County Jail as this person is on trial and it's on the news every night. She had no desire to try my case. She didn't want to try my case.
Did she ever interview you?
No.
Anybody from the DA's office interview you?
No. The only time I saw anybody from the district attorney's office was on my infrequent appearances in court.
How many different lawyers did you go through during this time? I mean, you had a court-appointed lawyer to begin with, right?
Let's see. My first lawyer in Craven County's partners made him withdraw from the case. He was very hard charging. Remember the person I mentioned who gave a crazy description?
Yep.
That they never filed any charges on my case, but that person's statement was in the case file. The reason I was given for his withdrawal was one of his partners had defended that person on charges 3 years before, and those charges were no longer pending. That's not a reason to withdraw. But I know for a fact his partners made him withdraw. They didn't
want to be part of the case.
They didn't want to be part of the case. I think in Craven County, I went through a total of 9 court-appointed lawyers, many of whom withdrew because of conflicts. There was actually one. God, this one chaps my hide. He came and met with me after he was appointed. Then he got the discovery. Then he hired on to defend that crazy person on a misdemeanor charge because he was court appointed, but the private practice lawyers he hired on to defend that person on a misdemeanor charge after he'd already met me and after he already had my discovery in his possession.
So now he's got a conflict.
So now he has a conflict, but the conflict should have been I withdraw from the misdemeanor case. He withdrew from my case. Eventually it got to the point, which I believe I did mention, all of these people that were involved in this as witnesses, they not only had pending charges when I was arrested, they had rather extensive criminal histories. And the one that did get out of jail, well, the 2 that got out of jail, one got probation on the drug charges. That was the original person I was charged with. The first person from Onslow County, the one who stole my wallet, she just got released. But dear God, did she get arrested a lot after that? I mean, like a lot. Mm-hmm. They eventually got to the point where they couldn't find a law firm in Craven or Carteret County that could defend me. They created a public defender's office in Craven County while I was in jail. Mm-hmm. But the entire public defender's office in Craven County had to declare conflicts. Everyone in the public defender's office had to declare conflicts. So they eventually appointed me a lawyer from Pitt County, a public defender from Pitt County. He's the one that first lawyer from the public defender's office in Pitt County. He actually had to withdraw because he moved to another prosecutorial district I think he became the head ADA in another county, but then they appointed me my final court-appointed lawyer on the cases there, and she stayed with it for the next several years, and she's the one who finally got my charges dismissed on. Her name's Sonia Prevet, and I have a lot of respect for her. She's a really good lawyer.
Okay, so in Craven County, you end up through the judicial system, but all the dealings were not in front of a judge. You had charges dismissed. The DA, ADA agreed to dismiss the charges, I presume.
No, in Craven County, my charges were eventually dismissed by a superior court judge ruling that my right to a speedy trial had been violated.
I want to hear about that.
Kevin, 1 second to back up on the prosecution and the defense attorneys. The system and correct me if I'm wrong, in the federal system, judges appoint defense attorneys. Even if they have a defense office. In Craven County, who appoints the attorneys?
The judges, I believe.
The judges or the
I-
district attorney?
I think they have to be approved for a.
I think it's going to be a judge.
It's a
I-
judge
The
appoints
name
them.
may be submitted to the judge by the DA or whoever.
Yeah.
All right. So you had, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you had one defense attorney that you had approximately 1 year that you wrote 10 letters to that never called you, never answered a letter, and never saw
That was
you.
from Onslow County.
Yeah, but you,
Yeah.
defense attorney.
Yeah, the first defense attorney I was appointed in Onslow County never had made any contact with me. I wrote multiple letters to, never responded to any effort on my part to contact them. To be 100% honest with you, I believe John actually staked out that person's office twice, didn't you? I know you did it once, where you literally sat outside the office like for a couple of days, didn't you? Before you actually succeeded in even seeing the person?
I'm not going to get into that, but
Sorry.
the point really is
Fix
that
it.
the whole defense attorney, you've had bad experiences. You had another defense attorney that refused to get evidence that would have exonerated you.
Yes.
And you actually went the day before trial, and he stood up in court because he had been asking this attorney to get this evidence. It was the medical report.
Oh, no, I'd also been asking him to read the case file. I did have a day where and this was a couple of years before I finally had a trial in Onslow County. I had a court-appointed lawyer who we had great difficulties with communication with him. Part of that was, I was in the Craven County Jail and he was in Onslow County, which does make that difficult. But he did not give me the full discovery until I think it was the Thursday when we were supposed to go to trial on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And they had moved me to the Onslow County Jail preparatory to having this trial. So I got there Thursday night. He comes and meets with me. He's very huffy about the fact that I've demanded he give me all the discovery to read. He's very upset about it.
Why?
That is a good question. Well, actually,
Okay.
You'll probably figure this out soon. Sunday night we meet. It took me 3 hours to read all of it. There were technically there were 3 medical reports in it because one person was seen at 2 facilities. One was an urgent care and the other was a hospital. But when you get a medical file, you'll initially think, oh dear God, look at all this I have to read.
Most of it says nothing.
Insurance, paperwork. They print out stuff about how these are our procedures for doing an x-ray and these are our safety precautions for
They
doing
always
an x-ray.
baffle me when I get
And the
my
person
own.
didn't have an x-ray, but though that person did have an x-ray. There's really only like 4 or 5 pages in there that matter. And you can very quickly go through and find those 4 or 5 pages this is what actually happened with this
They
person.
kill a lot of trees. But,
It took me 3 hours to read all of it. It had been given to me in no particular. Some of that 3 hours was spent actually putting it in, getting all the pages from one thing together and that sort of thing. And then I reread it a couple of times. And then Sunday night we met. And as we are talking about trial strategy and that sort of thing, I, on more than one occasion, mentioned things to him and he went, "What?" And I said, "This?" He goes, "Oh, can I keep this?" I was like, "What?" And a lot of this, there was some of this stuff that was out and out just exculpatory for the case. I was and he had clearly not even read through the case file.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day when they took me to court, and I'd called my dad and told my dad, they have such a weak case. Maybe he can be this unprepared and me get acquitted. But that's a maybe, So do I really want to risk? Because if you get convicted on those charges, you're going away for a long time, and you're going to spend the rest of your life on a registry, and it's going to ruin your life. Like, so I went into court and I told the bailiffs who took me over there, look, I need to speak to the judge. And they said, well, can you talk to your attorney? And I said, I need to speak to the judge about my attorney. And so they took me out into court, and I told the judge, I can't continue with him. He is not prepared for trial. I'd actually written a 7-page letter to the judge, which it's probably good for this attorney that I couldn't get the bailiffs to take the letter. I couldn't get the judge to take the letter in court. So, I mean, they gave me like 1 minute to say why I wanted him removed as my lawyer. And it was like, he's not prepared. I'd written a 7-page letter of why he wasn't prepared, you know. But at that point, having had all these incredibly bad experiences with court-appointed lawyers, my father made the decision to overrule my belief that he should not spend his money on my problems.
He hired an attorney.
And he hired an attorney by the name of Richard McNeil, who ordinarily only in civilian court only defends murder charges. I believe
he and his partner.
I believe that my case is the only case he ever took that was not a murder case.
It's a serious team there.
Yes, and he was a severe change from my previous attorney because he was extremely.
So how long ago was this?
I was 19, wasn't it? 2019. I think it was 2019.
Okay. So you've been in jail for 3 years.
Yes. Well, it was
Well,
late
thereabouts.
19. So it was, but, and then there were delays in Onslow County for
COVID.
mostly on, well,
You had a year,
COVID
nothing was going to happen in Oslo.
But COVID was not as much of a delay as I kept getting put behind on the prosecutor's to-do list behind cases that were more recent than mine.
Okay.
Which is not.
And
how
yours
that's
wasn't investigated by an Onslow County
No.
officers.
No one from Onslow County ever spoke
Interesting.
to any of the alleged victims. No one from Onslow County filed any subpoenas, never any search warrants, nothing. Now, the person in Onslow County, the case that they did eventually actually start to take me to trial on, that was the person who stole my wallet. Now, eventually come to discover that the day that person stole my wallet, as near as I can figure, their mother kidnapped them, essentially, and took them to drug rehab. It's reasonably clear. I've never seen anything that flat outright states it, but it's reasonably clear that when the mother picked this person up, this person thought they were being taken to the mall. They got taken to Virginia to a drug rehab facility.
Oh, good.
Now, one of the requirements of that drug rehab facility is that you have an STD test before you're admitted.
Mm-hmm.
This person hadn't had one. So they were sent to an urgent care facility to get an STD test. We do not know what that person said to the staff.
That'd be a HIPAA problem. Anyway, so.
Well, because it was the records from there were obtained through a medical release eventually by the investigator in Craven County.
Okay.
That facility called the Virginia State Police because something this person said to them led them to believe that they had been attacked earlier in the day. That's it for what started that ball rolling, because that person refused to talk to the state police. She was incoherent and not making sense, and her pupils were irregular. So
Hence the reason she was going for rehab.
Yeah.
Okay.
You would think. They did you know what a C-spine is?
Mhm.
Okay, so they did a head and neck x-ray on her. And then the state police wanted her transferred to an actual hospital where a rape kit could be done. So they transferred to the actual hospital. Now, we know what she said to the staff at the hospital, which was basically, why am I not going back to rehab? There, they did a CT scan, monitored her for 6 hours, made very detailed notes of everything she said, which was basically, I just went for an STD test and now all this is going on and I just want to go back to rehab. That's it that happened in that. But the Virginia State Police did put on some database a report of this incident happening, and they did call Onslow County because they had contacted this person's mother, and the mother said, well, we saw a car leaving as we were coming in. Here's the license plate number of it. That was my license plate. That's what started all this. That was my license plate.
Gotcha.
Kevin, let me, again, just to clarify things. One big issue we haven't brought up is that you were confined to your cell 47 out of 48 hours for what length of time?
18 months.
18 months. And again, we talk about the Eighth Amendment, talks about cruel and unusual punishment. And it talks about you have to prove deliberate influence on the part of the jailers.
Mm-hmm.
Are they deliberately influencing your stay 47 out of 48 hours? And what would the cause be normally? Why would you put somebody 47 out of 48 hours in their cell? A danger to themselves or others? Or why would that normally happen? And what did you find out? Why did that happen to you?
I asked about it. I filed grievances about it because on the jail's policy, you're only supposed to be under those conditions for 1 month as a disciplinary result for getting in a fight or something, a maximum of a month for getting in a fight or something. Could never get any answer from higher ups in the jail staff, but I did eventually have one of the guards who actually told me, you're staying here because the investigators told us to keep you here. Which they kept me under those conditions. After literally a year, I was offered a plea where I could plead guilty to 4 low-level felonies covering my cases in Craven and Onslow County, which was actually having consensual, basically under North Carolina law, the way it's written, non-missionary sex, I think. They wanted me to plead guilty to that, and they would release me. But those would be 4 Class I felonies. And the defense attorney, court-appointed defense attorney I had at that time, the first time I'd met with her, I said, I'm not pleading guilty to anything I didn't do just so they'll let me go. And when she came to me with that plea offer, and I said, no. She was, but you have no idea when they might take you to trial. You could be home by Friday. It was Wednesday. I was like, I told you the first time we met, I'm not pleading guilty to something I didn't do just so they'll let me go. And she actually said, you were serious about that? I was like, yes, I was serious about that. Well, she comes back several months later with the exact same plea offer, and I turned it down again. A day later, they moved me out. They removed me from those restrictive conditions. Just coincidental.
So during this 47 hours that you were confined, 1 hour you were not over a 2-day period of time, whatever length of time that was, how many times did the investigator come to see you?
I had one day where I was out and I told my dad on the phone that I had a written list of questions for my lawyer. And the next day, the investigator himself showed up at my cell at 7 o'clock in the morning and tore my cell apart. I didn't say well, actually, I said I had a list of questions. I think he assumed it was a written list of questions. They weren't written down. I just had a list of questions. And he tore my cell apart, searching my cell.
You know what?
Made a real mess too. But the really interesting, they never came and questioned me. But I honestly think that the second Onslow case that they charged me in was just an opportunity to talk to me. Because I mean, the accusation in that case is just the person gave the name of a motel, but also described the motel. Well, the name of the description of the motel, even vaguely, it's not even close to what it looks like. So, but then they're the one where, and once again, we have nothing recorded from this person. We have something Mike Sawyer wrote.
Okay.
But I think that was just an opportunity. But then every time I had a scheduled court appearance in Onslow County, I would be driven down by investigators. On 2 occasions, the actual lead investigator in my case was one of the people, and they would spend that entire trip trying to convince me that I needed to talk to them.
But you had an attorney.
But I had an attorney. There was one occasion they drove me all the way down to Onslow County. We get to Onslow County, and the clerk of court in Onslow County goes, we're doing family court today. This is our mistake. So they turn around and drive me all the way back and do the exact same thing.
Yeah. Kevin, let me get back to the 47 hour. One of the things Judge Scalia ruled is a thing called indifference, deliberate indifference. And what that means is that you can claim cruel and unusual punishment of being put 47 out of 48 hours in a prison if the prison had indifference, deliberate indifference to your condition and why they were doing it, and how that gets to cruel and unusual punishment. Were they deliberately indifferent to your plight of being 47 out of 48 hours? By the way, they did some psychological, studies of people 47.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How it impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, it's
locked away for 47 hours, and other people are walking around basically free inside the system. And you couldn't? Did you feel like you were a lesser quality person?
Everybody that was on the block I was on was under those same conditions. But it was the discipline and punishment.
Were there people in there charged with murder that were walking around and?
Yeah. There were people with murder charges. There were people with drug trafficking charges.
Did you have any fights while you were in there?
I did, but none of them had anything to do with my charges.
Are you saying that everybody was in 47 out of 48
Everybody
hours?
that was on the block that I was on. Because remember, I was on the discipline block.
Right.
But you're only supposed to spend a maximum of 30 days on the discipline block. Unless, they had a couple of people that were what they called lifers on that block, but that was because they had attacked the guards on multiple occasions. They were, those people were going to stay. You're going to stay restricted.
So you weren't there. You weren't the only one there 47 out of 48 hours for 18 months or 15 months.
I was the only one there. I actually had guards go and try and convince the sergeants to move me off the block because there was no reason for me to be there.
Most of them were on there for a determinate period of time.
For a determinate period of time as a result of a disciplinary violation.
You're a danger to yourself or others. Yeah, that's the criteria.
There were some people who had committed so many discipline infractions that they ended up just being kept there.
Sure.
There were a couple of legitimately crazy people. Like at one point in time, I think I was a month in when I actually called the guard over and said, as long as those two have been screaming at each other, why don't you move one of those guys out of that cell up there? And he goes, there's only one guy in that cell. Oh, okay. That guy was he was in there a long time, but that's because they couldn't.
He had a reason to be there. They had no other place to put him. Unfortunately, they got no other place to put him. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, he also, he was so huge. He looked like a Hulk. Apparently they were having difficulty getting a mental facility to take him.
I'm sure.
Because so he stayed there for a while, but
during your time in there, how would you describe what it did to you? let's just say, first of all, you were in jail for a long period of time, but then you were also in this ward that you couldn't get but 1 hour out every 48 hours.
I read a lot of books.
Uh-huh.
John sent me books. My
Uh-huh.
dad sent me books. I had friends who would send me books. I would trade books with other people on the block.
That's how you passed your time.
Yeah, reading books.
What did it do to you? Looking back at it today, what difference has it made in you, as psychologically speaking?
Your reputation too.
The reputation, we know you
Yeah, my reputation
that's
went
hurting you,
in
but
the trash. But it's probably bad to say, but that's the 47 out of 48. Really, I don't think that affected me as much as when I was initially in the jail. It was under different management than it is now, and it was very Lord of the Flies. I mean, yeah, you were in your cell. You could get your time on the block extended or get an additional discipline violation if you broke out of your cell, but it was really easy to break out of your cell. Most of the locks were broken because they were really poorly made. And you could actually take a folded up piece of toilet paper roll and slide it down the lock like the old credit card trick, and it would pop the door open. And you would actually have some people who would pop out of their cell and go over to somebody else's cell to try and rob them of, stuff you buy on canteen,
Really?
additional food items, that sort of thing. You'd have people who do that because there was like a gang issue and things like that. I know of multiple occasions where that happened in the middle of the night and the guards never even noticed it. That actually probably had more of an effect on me than anything else. When I eventually got out of the jail, I wouldn't sit here then. When I first got out for about 6 months, there's no way I'd sit with my back to that door.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
now, but
I sat in corners. I didn't like going to loud places.
I understand that.
I would stick very close to people that I knew and trusted because that's what you do in there.
Mm-hmm.
That has been more of an effect. Now, I will say that when the new sheriff was elected in there, one of the first things that happened was they went through and they fixed all the locks, and they welded plates over it so that you couldn't slide anything down through it. So that, that kind of stays with you.
Sure.
Let me ask you a question. I want to ask you, what is the difference between jail and prison? Which is important for this.
It's
case.
extremely important. First of all, jail, and I'm not going to give a percentage, and the vast majority of the occasions, a person is in jail is charged with a criminal act, but he's not been convicted of that criminal act. He may have been convicted of others, irrelevant. You go to jail for the charges that you're charged with, for whatever you are accused of doing. That's it. You haven't been convicted. You're an innocent man. You are innocent until proven guilty is cheap words to say, but it's a fact of life. Prison. That's when you go from jail to the courthouse. You see the judge. A jury says guilty. The judge says you're going to serve 3 to 5 in central prison. They pack you up. They haul you to prison. Prison is full of people who are convicted. They're not innocent individuals. They've been convicted of the crimes they've been charged with by law. One exception to that, as far as the jail is concerned, if you're sentenced to a minor, whatever the minor offense is, for 6 months, I think it's 6 months or less, the judge can order you to be sentenced and serve your time in the county jail.
It's misdemeanors.
Yeah, it's mostly misdemeanors. Yes.
It used to be if your sentence was a year or less, you served.
It's now 6 months.
Now it's misdemeanor.
Just misdemeanor?
Yeah, because there was actually a guy in the Cragen County Jail who had a real hard time with that whole "you're not supposed to drink and drive" thing. He spent a couple of years in the Cragen County Jail, but it was like he got caught driving drunk. Mm-hmm. Then he bonded out from that, and then he got caught driving drunk and hadn't been to court for the first one,
and no driver's
license. Then he bonded
license.
out on that, and then he did it again, and he may have even done it again, and he still hadn't been to court for the very first one. He spent like 2 years in the Craig County Jail because it was all misdemeanors. But the judge felt that he needed, they have what they call consecutive and concurrent sentences.
Yes.
The judge apparently felt, and I would have to agree, that they really needed to do something to get the point across to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So he was given concurrent
Here's
consecutive
the problem with that DWI law and whatever. He had not been convicted of the first DWI when he was charged with the second and the third. Therefore, he cannot be charged with driving while impaired, second offense, or third offense.
Yeah.
Every one of them is an individual first offense,
previously
and they have to be tried and dealt with sentence-wise for that.
Let's get back to the speedy trial thing.
Yes.
Okay, you were in jail, not prison.
Not convicted.
And part of the criteria for a speedy trial is that the defendant is the one asking for continuances, because the whole issue, what makes it a possible violation of the Constitution, is that if you were the one asking for the 20, how many delays were there?
I think it was in district court.
In general, how many times did they get a delay for continuance?
23.
23. We'll use 23. Okay, there were 23 continuances. And what the Supreme Court said is that one of the reasons that you won't have a speedy trial is if the defendant is the one asking for continuances.
Right.
Because the government is under obligation. I forget how many days, they must bring you to trial. Who was asking for the continuances?
Oh, all the continuances were requested by the prosecution.
Okay, and this gets back to what is that each crime has elements.
Yep.
So you can't just say they violated the speedy trial constitutional amendment, because one of the criteria, one of the elements, is they wouldn't have violated if you were asking for it, but you're saying you didn't. This is why this case, when I look at just the Constitution and the three things, the excessive bond, speedy trial, and cruel and unusual punishment, these are constitutional rights, civil rights. And if what you're saying and what the evidence shows, this is a major case. If you have an individual, if you look at this, take a step back, a school teacher, top secret clearance, no arrest record, is arrested. Okay. And you spend almost 6 years in jail, 15 months basically in solitary, no speedy trial, and a $5 million bond. When you look at those three things, just those three things, that the Constitution has been raped, if that's the case, if everything that I'm looking at, Lady Justice had her blindfold ripped off.
I would argue also, though, that at least to me, if you went into court, you raised your hand, you swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and the prosecutor asked you a series of questions, you gave one set of answers. And then a defense attorney comes up and asks you the same basic questions, but also presents documentation and written evidence that contradicts what you had initially said, and you have to walk back multiple times things you said to where eventually you actually admit that all of your answers that were given to the prosecutor were incorrect, and you had been in possession of proof that what you were saying was incorrect. What would you expect to happen to you?
You used the word incorrect.
Wrong.
Did he lie?
I would say
with intent, malice.
Yes.
Okay, so he knew he was lying. It's not something that the defense attorney sprang on him and said, well, yeah, maybe that could have been the case. No, he knew he lied. He presented falsehoods knowing that they were falsehoods, right?
Yes. He had to know.
That's called perjury.
Yes. So if you or I did that, we would be expect to be charged with perjury, and I guarantee you we would.
I wish that was the case more often.
To me, if he was not charged when we would have been, then to me that also violates the Equal Protection Clause, because if they treat us different than they would treat him, they're violating. That's not equal protection under the law.
Okay.
If he's allowed to get away with stuff that we're not allowed to get away with,
Now, this is a sworn police officer, law
That's a
enforcement
sworn
officer.
police
Okay,
officer.
is this law enforcement officer still employed?
as far as I know,
How can he go to court and testify?
he should be on what's called the Brady list.
Yeah,
After his testimony in Onslow County, where he took the stand, and see this, we haven't got into this yet, but when he took the stand in a pretrial hearing in Onslow County, he testified that the victim in Craven County had to be taken to the hospital for treatment of injuries because, they initially said somebody broke into their hotel room.
Right.
The next day they said, well, I was working as a prostitute and this guy showed up and then he attacked me after he'd paid me. And then he stole the money. That would, and they told him that story. He testified that that's the story they told, and they had to be taken to the hospital for treatment of their injuries. The only way that I could have been charged with first-degree assault, even if I had been the person who did that, which I was not, because you eventually come to figure out that just didn't happen, would be if that person had serious bodily injuries. So if he's going to go in and testify to a magistrate and say this person had serious bodily injuries, and he's already had the medical records for 3 months at this point, one would logically assume he's looked at the medical
Did
records.
any of these accusers ever take the stand?
No, they did not.
I'm sorry.
They did not.
They had no witnesses?
See,
No
after
witnesses who were...
after the pretrial hearing, the assistant district attorney.
Let me interrupt you. Was the day before a trial that attorneys do motions, and so the motions, the testimony Kevin's talking about happened, and the judge said words to the effect to the new DA, assistant DA, to go read the file or something like that. But what the judge said, and I hope you can remember the words, I can't. After the witness, the main witness in this,
The law enforcement officer, the investigator.
Mike Sawyer.
finished his testimony, what exactly? I don't have the exact words, but
What did the judge say?
what
tell
did the
him?
judge say?
The judge said that his testimony was the least credible and least believable testimony he'd seen from a law enforcement officer in his career. Ouch! And see,
There's no record of that.
Of
right?
course not. There's
no, but here's the thing. He, and this was hilarious because Richard McNeil's paralegal was sitting next to me when McNeil was cross-examining the investigator. And, when he brought up, he had said that the alleged victim had been taken to the hospital for treatment of her injuries. Now, McNeil's got a stack of papers in his hands when he starts talking to him. And he says, was this person ever seen by medical staff? And he'd already got him a couple of times at this point. So he'd already dinged him on a couple of things that he'd said that were not correct. The description given, because there was Mike Sawyer's case notes, and there was actually a recording of that person talking to him. The next day when they came forward and said I was attacked in my room by somebody I let in the room, not who broke into the room. And he actually asked the person, well, why'd you tell a totally different story yesterday? Well, I was really high when I was talking to you yesterday. In that recorded testimony, they'd given a description of their attacker, and is extremely tall and bald and very thin, which, full disclosure, one effect on me was I at the time this actually occurred, I was probably 40 or 50 pounds heavier than I am now.
Jail will cause you to lose weight.
Oh, like a lot. Particularly, another thing I will say for the new sheriff in Craven County, that he changed services for the cafeteria staff.
That's
During
Sheriff Hughes over there.
Yeah, during my first 14 months in the Craven County Jail, I went from 265 pounds to 180 pounds.
So you were never skinny
I
prior to that.
prior to that. That was the lightest I had been since I got a severe bout of bronchitis my freshman year of high school and lost a ton of weight really fast.
I had that one too.
But he dinged him on, there's a pretty significant difference between the description they gave and the person you ended up arresting and charging. He dinged him already on that. So when he asked him, he said, well, was this person ever seen by medical staff for treatment? He actually said, no, I don't believe they were.
Really?
An hour and a half earlier, he had said they had to be taken to the hospital for treatment for their injuries. And then McNeil said, you testified earlier that they had been taken to the hospital. Oh, yeah. What I meant was we never got their medical records. And McNeil says, the stack of paper in my hands is the medical records that you yourself picked up from the hospital. What I meant was I never read those medical records. By the time that little short, 3-minute conversation had taken place, Mike Sawyer, do you remember Home Improvement with Wilson, the neighbor?
Yeah.
He started doing this, and it got to the point where sitting at the attorney's table out there, all you could see of him was from here up in the witness stand. And it didn't get any better. It actually got actively worse as this went on. And I think McNeil had him on the stand for a good 2.5 hours.
It was brutal.
It was really brutal. And I will say, Richard McNeil, he had his ducks in a row. He brought up everything he could. See, what they had wanted to do in Onslow County, there's a thing called 404B. Which 404B is where you bring up at trial prior bad acts.
Okay, gotcha.
Which is it's not supposed to be used to prove you have a propensity, but to show a pattern of behavior. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to bring in this alleged witness from Craven County to testify at the trial in Onslow County, and McNeil himself said, look, there's no way they think they have a good case on this. They're just hoping to create enough smoke that the jury convicts on something based on this. By the end of that hearing, the judge essentially ruled one of the requirements of bringing in a 404B witness is that it has to be reasonable for you to believe that the jury is going to believe that what the witness is testifying to is something that actually happened. And he basically ruled, I can't let this person testify because it's not possible for a reasonable jury to believe that what they're saying is true. Because when they were taken to the hospital, and they were examined at the hospital, and they had described to Sawyer a brutal assault, a truly brutal assault. When they were examined at the hospital, the hospital found absolutely no injuries whatsoever. They did do a rape kit. That rape kit sat in the evidence locker at the Craven County Jail until December of 2021, when it was finally sent to the state lab by Mike Sawyer. But do you know what he didn't send the state lab? A sample of my DNA. He actually put that there was no, he put on the form that there was no sample of the suspect DNA. Yeah, there was no sample of suspect DNA provided. So the state lab has never processed that.
And this was a hooker, so samples would be, well.
Well, and to be honest with you, though, I don't know that it was.
Yeah.
They were hiding. Look, these two, they were hiding at that hotel in Craven County because they had warrants in Carteret County. Mm-hmm. And I don't. None of them have ever been arrested for that. He presented it as that, them as that way, but none of them have ever been arrested.
Nobody was ever charged with filing a false police report? Nothing like that?
No. Now, okay, the victim from the Onslow County victim, the one who stole my wallet, was released and had all their pending criminal charges dismissed while I was in jail. 13 months after my arrest, they and a friend of theirs were arrested in Havelock with 27 stolen firearms, and I know they had 4 trafficking charges, and I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the levels of trafficking because, based on once you're above a certain amount, it's trafficking. But if you go enough above that amount, it's level 2 trafficking. Enough above it, they had trafficking for methamphetamine, trafficking for opioids, heroin, or fentanyl. Trafficking, it was like benzodiazepines, like Xanax, and they had a lot of charges. Interestingly enough, they were arrested at a motel that's straight across the street from the police station. It's like, so they may have been drug dealers, but they weren't very smart drug dealers.
Okay, but let me get back to the court case, the last court case, the court hearing. As you know, you plead down. 95% or so of cases are pled out. They can't go to trial. So the judge told the ADA to go home and read the file some more about. She was new. I'll give her the credit, and she was not feeling well. So she comes back the next day, and she says, "We're going to basically drop all the charges, unless you, Now again, the charges were the 3
voluntary dismissal.
Well, the charges were at one point forcible rape, first-degree rape, kidnapping, assault with a deadly
weapon, and
on
and
on. Okay. So she says, which is what everybody tries to do. Well, we need to get some conviction here because we have taken almost 6 years of your life. We have done no speedy trial. We got a problem. So what they came up with, and having been in law enforcement and retired,
real quick, John, because she actually came in the next day and said, "Judge, I can't continue. I have pneumonia." So we either have to continue this, or the defendant can plead guilty to misdemeanor assault on a female.
Was it assault or battery?
It was assault.
Yeah.
Same thing. Basically.
But now my lawyer came and told me about this and said, it's your decision. And it was actually like, I didn't want to. I went into court and I was mad, and I'd spoken to my dad on the phone. I told my dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. There's a part of me that says, dear God, last time they continued this, it was 2 years. I could go, I could go home today with, the maximum sentence for that. If you're like
$50 fine, 6 months suspended sentence.
That's normal
Basically,
for a first time offense. It's usually a suspended sentence, but the maximum sentence, if you have like a long criminal record for that, is I believe 120 days in jail.
You did something that day that I've never in court, and I was sitting in the first row. He says, when they asked him that, he says to the judge, "I'm not guilty of this, the misdemeanor charge." Now, had that been federal court,
it would have been done.
Well, he couldn't accept his guilty plea then. Yeah.
I actually told the judge that he was forcing me to take a plea. He said, "I'm not forcing you to do anything." And I said, there's actually a transcript of this. I said to the judge, I sat next to her for 9 hours yesterday. She doesn't have pneumonia. Well, I've seen a note from her doctor, and I'm thinking to myself, so? If I've been seeing a doctor for 10 years, I can probably get him to give me a note that says dang near anything.
Let me get back to my point. Yeah. What the government does is try to get you to plead to something so they can say that's normal. Most cases are pleas. But to go from first degree to a misdemeanor,
traffic offense.
But they got it. They got that. But really, if you think about it, they couldn't argue this in front of a jury in terms of how do you plead down? How do you let this person out on a misdemeanor if you believe he viciously raped and beat up 3 defenseless women? 4 defense. How do you do that? So that would the question I would have is, you got him on a misdemeanor, which is a traffic ticket's a misdemeanor. Yeah. And so to me, that's the insanity of this. So the district attorney got his plea, but if this would ever go to court, civil suit or whatever, they would have a tough time getting up in front of a jury and
Oh, yes.
and saying, well, how do you pled it down to all this?
Well, it was actually an Alfred plea. An Alfred plea is where you say, I'm not admitting that I'm guilty to this, but I am admitting that you guys might be able to convict me of it if you actually tried me on it. Which admittedly in North Carolina, and this is a ridiculous case, but there actually was a guy who was convicted of assault on a female because he got in an argument with a waitress and poked his finger at her, but he didn't touch her, and he got convicted at trial of it. He was convicted in, like in district court by a judge, and he appealed it all the way up the chain to the state Supreme Court, and they upheld his conviction, even though he had.
But that's legal. The threat.
Yeah, says but that's assault on
it is
using strong language and pointing in a person's direction can. And so I don't know. Maybe they could have convicted me, but I have serious doubts. Considering the fact that
not going from the extreme that they had to that, they could not. I don't believe a jury. The jury would laugh them out of the.
But
I think
to also to kind of emphasize how bad a day this was for Mike Sawyer in court the day of that hearing, the judge actually said to the prosecutor, he's standing trial on these charges, but he has other charges pending in Onslow County that he's had pending now for almost 6 years that you haven't indicted him on. And she actually said, because she'd apparently been to the prison where this person was staying to talk to them, she actually said that I have spoken to the second victim, and the second victim says that if called to testify, she will say she has no memory of ever speaking to Mike Sawyer in her life.
Okay.
Now, I don't know when the prosecutor's office had that conversation with that alleged victim. But the moment you have a conversation like that, you actually have an ethical responsibility to go back, walk into court and say, today we're dropping those charges.
Absolutely.
That didn't happen.
Should have been a voluntary dismissal.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecutor should have dismissed those charges. There's you
don't have to do that now.
But at some point in time, a previous assistant district attorney on the case had also gone to jail to speak to the alleged victim. And the alleged victim had told them, when they had asked about their statements to medical staff at the hospital they were taken to, they had said that they really don't remember what they had said to the medical staff there because they had snuck some heroin in a syringe in their bra, and every time the nurses had been leaving the room, they had been shooting up with heroin.
Special.
But now, according to what Mike Sawyer wrote, which once again, we have no recording of any statements from, there's nothing in their own words, so we have to take his word for it, which I'm going to have to admit. At this point, his word is mine. According to him, what this person claimed was that I had showed up, they'd thought, that it felt off, so they had taken off running, and I'd chased them down, and I'd literally knocked in the door to their trailer, and had pistol whipped them across the head, strangled them into unconsciousness, and then violently sexually assaulted them. Which is why their extremely thorough examination by medical staff, which, full disclosure, this person was, I think at least some of this was that they had insurance. The CT scan seems like a little extreme. But they found absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They didn't find any bruises. They didn't find any stiffness or soreness in the neck. They certainly didn't find any head injuries. And this person's head was thoroughly examined because they were coming and going from consciousness and that sort of thing. But when you read through the file, you're like, this person has literally every symptom of being high.
Lee, you've sat up there very quietly, paying a lot of attention to this.
Yes.
You've been in courts a lot.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this and, some confusion, but a lot of thoughts. And my very first thought is, first of all, I don't see where they had credible evidence to arrest him. And then as it goes on and on and on, it seems like to me that maybe some of these defense attorneys that were, the court was trying to appoint to defend you didn't want to take the case because it involved accusations against a law enforcement officer not doing his job or inventing evidence. So that flashed through my mind.
Great.
And this charge with Onslow County, but Craven County was in charge of all that. I don't understand why you say that Onslow never investigated. They just took the evidence from Craven. I don't understand that either. It seems like there's been a huge breakdown in the court system, in the defense system, in the prosecution. And at one time I would have said, yeah, right. But like I told you one time before, I have been following this case in another state, and I am thoroughly convinced that the investigator that investigated this case invented a lot of the evidence because it involved some police officers. And I truly believe there was some corruption there. And then I'm listening to his and I'm like, first of all, I don't really, of course, I've not read the files, but I don't see why first of all, 6 years, he should have had a dismissal. I mean, if you have the right to a speedy trial, and if they could go to court and present what little bit of evidence that the prosecution had, I don't see why it was still going on. I mean, is everything resolved now?
Yes. The charges were still pending in Craven County.
Right.
After my dismissals in Onslow County. And I hadn't been indicted.
Right.
My lawyer, the defense attorney who took a job in another county from Pitt, he had filed a request for a speedy trial. Then the lawyer that was appointed to replace him, also from the Pitt County Public Defender's Office, filed a motion requesting dismissal on speedy trial grounds. And it took us over a year from the time she filed that to actually get a ruling on it. It was continued in district court for 13 months. The prosecutor kept coming in and saying, well, we're going to indict him at the next meeting of the grand jury. Then we'd come back 3 months later and I haven't been indicted.
Do you know whether they took this before the grand jury, any other grand jury, during this 3 months?
As far as I know, they did not.
Okay.
But it is really difficult in North Carolina to get any kind of grand jury records unless the prosecution willingly turns them over. They may have. I don't know.
Lee, you knocked it out of the park. I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
But the last time we went in district court, and we were going in front of the same judge every time. The last time we went in district court, and they said it again. We're gonna indict him. I think this time they said, well, when we called for the grand jury, we forgot to tell the sheriff's department that we needed somebody to come testify, so he didn't get indicted. It's like, what? That was actually what they said. Now, I do remember that day was the day that my defense attorney said, well, he's got misdemeanor charges. Let's just go, and we're in district court, so let's just go ahead and try him on the misdemeanor charges. And the prosecutor at that point in time said, well, that wouldn't be possible. The misdemeanor charges are directly tied to the felony charges, and we couldn't.
He was trying to get that found not guilty very quickly. And
yeah, because
that would have been a wise move.
Yeah, she just wanted to do something, get something accomplished. But I actually, I got a little huffy when he said he was going to continue it. I probably came pretty close on more than one occasion to getting
Contempt of court.
contempt of court
Uh-huh.
charges.
He did try.
My lawyer actually said to me at one point, they could find you in contempt, and I said, I have 2,147 days of jail credit. Throw that at me. You can give me 30 days a lot of times before you run out of days of credit I already have, Judge. But yeah, I know that's not how that works. But
I wanted to ask you a question. What was that person that said, where do I go to get my reputation back? What is it? And
That's
I know
the point right now.
I know that you wanted to do this radio show because people still think, hopefully people hearing this will get the word out that you're innocent of what you were charged with. If you Google you, you're Jack the Ripper.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody Googles me right now, all they find is
I
police.
did.
Yeah. 9-year-old police reports that say
That's what I found.
that make it sound like
So-
I'm
So
Jack
wait.
the Ripper,
You had no arrest. You had a top secret clearance. You were a school teacher,
a former school teacher.
former school
The
teacher.
newspaper apparently didn't figure that out.
Yeah.
But
And you had a reputation, a good reputation in the community. What do you want to happen now? What do you say? How
I'd
do you
like everybody to know that I wasn't guilty, that I didn't do that stuff. I'd also like no police officer wakes up one morning and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to file some really serious charges and I'm going to make up a bunch of stuff to back it up. That's not how they do it. And they don't do it just once. And this guy is still working as a police officer. He's still filing charges. He's been promoted. He was a sergeant when all this started. He's a lieutenant now. He's a detective. He's in charge of other detectives. He's in charge of major crimes. This is a person who should, at the very least, not be allowed to testify in court without everybody that he testifies to knowing he did this. But I'll be honest with you, I think he should be in jail, or he should at least have a criminal conviction on his record for false statements under oath, or willful failure to discharge duties, which is a separate charge in North Carolina for a law enforcement official. I mean, I would like to sue, because unfortunately, the only way to make people understand these days that the bad stuff you have been doing, maybe this is the way you always did it, but it needs to cost you some money.
But here's the problem. Nobody in Craven, no attorney in Craven or Onslow County would take this case. And to me, again, I did FBI work. I know evidence. There is more than reasonable suspicion to believe everything you said today is true, based on a lot of facts, which raises it to probable cause.
Yeah, that would be him.
So my question to any attorney, I mean, why wouldn't you want to look into this? You would piss off a lot of people by taking the case, but we would have justice. I mean, isn't what it's all about, justice for all?
And I think one of the big problems that Craven County is faced with is, since I don't think this was his first rodeo, since I don't think this was the first time he made up evidence and lied to make his case sound stronger than it really was, or even just lied to make himself look good, which I think a large part of this had to do with. I think that if somebody does a little looking, they're going to find other people who. I had experiences in jail where I would have people bring me their case files to read over before they went to talk to their lawyer and say, hey, what should I ask my lawyer? What should I do here? That sort of thing. I know of people who pled guilty to stuff that if you actually read through the evidence against them, you could clearly say they did not do. But the only way they could get out of the jail was to plead guilty.
Yep.
And that is not how this system is supposed to work. We are not supposed to essentially force people to plead guilty to crimes just so they can be released from jail. And that happens. That happens a distressing amount. And the first assistant district attorney that was on my case in Craven County, actually did read the case file and actually said to herself, oh, dear God. But if she'd have done anything about it, she would have been, they talk about the thin blue line. Well, the thin blue line doesn't just cover cops. A prosecutor who turned around and pulled the trigger on saying that this guy was an inveterate liar would have had to face the fact that a whole lot of previous cases of his could end up getting re-examined and potentially overturned because he lied about them.
So, Kevin, I want to ask you, so all your cases have been disposed of now, right?
Yes.
But they were disposed based on the fact that your constitutional rights were violated because it was not done in a timely manner, right?
The cases in Craven County, that was the basis for it.
So you were charged with the crimes, so you actually weren't found guilty or innocent. So you still have to carry that stigma with you the rest of your life that I wasn't found not guilty because of being not guilty.
You never had your day in court for it,
Yeah,
did you?
that's what
No,
I'm saying.
and I was
You
never
had your
Look at
day.
me, your day in court right now.
I'm a
polygraph. I have been accused of being a lie detector. Did you do any of this?
No, I did not.
Okay.
And I was never gonna get my day in court. They were the only reason they ever indicted me in Craven County was because a district court judge said, if you don't indict him which this was when I got visibly upset when he said he was going to continue it. That judge he was always continuing it. So he'd be the person sitting on the bench. He looked me right in the eye and said, I will give you this. If you come in front of me in this district court again and you haven't been indicted, I will dismiss it. And they indicted me after that. Then but then when they actually had a hearing, and this was interesting. The first time we appeared in Superior Court, the judge that we appeared in was in the district attorney's office at the time of my arrest, and he had to point that out to the district attorney. He was like, "I can't rule on this case. I worked in the district attorney's office when he was arrested." But he did say, you have misdemeanor charges on this right here. The statute of limitation has long since expired on those. If they're not directly tied to the felonies, then they should have been dismissed a long time ago. And she said, well, we can go ahead and do that today, Your Honor. A month earlier, she had told a district court judge they were directly tied to the felonies. But they don't record what you say in district court, and they do in Superior Court. And it just
So is it still outstanding in Onslow?
No, nothing is. I don't have everything's.
What did they drop it on? Basis on what?
It doesn't matter. If an ADA or district attorney says, I want to dismiss this case.
Well, that's what I meant. It was
dismissal.
just dismissed.
There,
Right.
that-
They found out they had no evidence, no credible evidence.
I mean, and actually, one of the things that happened during that hearing, I forget how McNeil managed to work this in, but he said something about the victim having admitted to the district attorney's office that they had been luring men in to rob them.
Yes.
And
Standard operating procedure.
And the ADA said, well, that's not true. And he said, this is out of your case file, but here's I made a copy for you and the judge just in case, and handed it to her. Now, McNeil did tell me that the ADA had actually come to him and said that she had gone to her boss and told her boss that she wanted to dismiss everything, that she felt that.
But he needed that one,
and her boss
misdemeanor.
Her boss told her to get
the misdemeanor.
Get the misdemeanor, and. So I will say, I feel like she maybe should have actually read her case file on a case that, I mean, when we had that hearing, I guess they thought that the hearing was only going to take the morning. So we were supposed to have jury selection at noon that day. There was a jury pool sitting around waiting while we were having that hearing. The hearing ended up taking the whole day. Part of it having to do with the fact that McNeil had to ask Mike Sawyer 6 or 7 questions to get him to answer the first one. But it I think she genuinely didn't know how bad the case was until McNeil started pointing it out to her.
That can happen often.
But I mean, you would think if you're going to get ready to go try a case, you would have actually read through the case file. But I think all she did, and here's the other weird thing that I want an answer to. Well, there's a lot of them, but have you ever seen?
You didn't tell him, did you?
Oh, he's former law enforcement.
Okay. You know how long ago were you a law enforcement officer?
90s was the last time, and
Okay.
I've seen a lot of reports since then.
Okay. So you know how it's always on the like letterhead for the law enforcement agency, and it's got down at the bottom where it's been reviewed by your supervisor and supervisor approved and all that. We have Deputy Arnold's report from the first day he went to the Comfort Suites, and that's why we know that what the original story that person told was. The report that Mike Sawyer put in the case file is a 27-page Word document that doesn't even have dates on it. It's not on that letterhead. It's not marked supervisor approved. And a big reason for the way they do those reports is once that thing's marked supervisor approved, you can amend it. You can come in and type something else up that ends up getting attached to it, but you can't change what it says there. We don't have that from Mike Sawyer. And I think that Word document was typed up, even though it claims to start long before my arrest. I think it was typed up not only long after my arrest, but I think changes got made to it.
Do you feel that you mentioned this, referred to it, that this practice, what happened to you, is endemic in the system right now in all of North Carolina, or maybe, a few counties?
I certainly think it's endemic in Craven County. This is standard operating procedure to, like, the weaker your case is, the longer it takes. When I was in the Craven County jail, that's what they always said in the jail. The longer you've been sitting in this jail, the worse the case against you. Which by the time I left that jail, even the jail staff was firmly convinced I wasn't guilty. Because I'd been there for over 4 years, well over 4 years, and hadn't been indicted. But I saw other people in there who sat for a very, very long time and then were offered pleas to lesser offenses, much less. There was one guy who was charged with murder who eventually pled guilty to accessory to armed robbery.
From murder?
From murder. Even though there was no mention in the case file, because I read his whole case, there was no mention in his case file of an armed robbery. However, the sentence for armed robbery just happened, for accessory to armed robbery, just happened to almost exactly to the day line up to how much time he'd already been sitting in the jail. So he wasn't even on post-release. He wasn't on, they call it post-release now, but most people refer to it as parole. He wasn't even on post-release when he got released, and he didn't want to take it. But his lawyer called his mom, and his mom talked him into taking it.
I don't know how you did it for almost 6 years.
No, I would have been crazy. And by today, I'd be mean.
Have you ever read, I can't believe, John McCain's book? I'm trying to remember the title of it. From Where He Sat in the Hanoi Hilton.
Yes. That was years ago that I read it.
Yeah. I never would have to use that book as an instruction manual. But
How to get through from day to day to day.
How to get through from day to day. At one point in time, the light burned out in my cell when I was on the 47 and 1.
Really?
The light burned out, and they didn't change the light bulb for 8 days. So in order to read, they have a slot in the door that they put your food trays through. I had to sit with my back to the door and my head below the slot and hold my book up to where the light coming through that slot would
Do
hit.
you have a civil attorney yet you're talking to?
I do not have one, but I sure would like one. And if one wants to get in touch with
That's
me,
what I was
They
gonna
can call
ask.
you, have them call you, and you'll.
An attorney?
No, if anybody wants to call, any attorney wants to call,
Oh, yeah.
you could be the point of contact.
If you want to call me up, I'll reach out to a couple of attorneys.
because
You probably need one from, I will want one anyway.
But now I will admit the Craven County Jail is better than it was. I mean, it improved significantly.
I'm sure it is. No, two John one over there.
They've been in the news in recent history, but to be honest with you, that goes back to
That was a failure of construction.
who puts a drop ceiling in a jail.
With a
That's
ventilation
that case. That's a famous case in Ohio.
with ventilation leading to the roof.
Yeah, who puts a drop ceiling? But that's not the first person who's done that. I think it was 2 weeks after the jail opened was the first person who did it, but this isn't the second person who's done it. There were a couple of incidents while I was in there because it's up above the cells, it's sheet metal, but it's held down with these little tiny pop rivets. I mean, if you really want to, you can push it out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one guy while I was in there who got up there through there. But once you get out of, because there's a jail section of the building and there's the law enforcement section, and then there's also a section that was supposed to be courtrooms. Well, it is courtrooms, but they're not allowed to use them because of the state constitution. He apparently got out over like the law enforcement section where it's a regular drop ceiling and fell through it into the conference room. Oh no, it gets better. Into the conference room, shift change. So he comes falling through the ceiling.
You hate it when that happens.
In the middle of a bunch of sheriff's deputies wearing an orange jumpsuit. So yeah, that was oh my God. That's almost like slapstick that's not almost, that's slapstick comedy.
Well, for us now, but I'm sure when he went through the ceiling, he wasn't like laughing.
He wasn't, but everybody else was.
He
Everybody
wasn't
else was,
laughing,
yeah, I know.
but I'm sure that the law enforcement officers ended up laughing.
I've had a case where we're raiding a home for drugs, and there's all these FBI cars with lights and sirens out front, and somebody came to the house to buy drugs. I'm sitting, he said, well.
I like the police videos where people go to the police because somebody stole their drugs.
We were.
Let's not talk about John's videos. My blood pressure goes up every time I watch
We're waiting
them.
for a guy to come in his wife was present, right? Already made a couple of buys from the place. And a guy, we all know him here, another cop here. I was with him. Went out to pick up the guy that he had made buys from. He wasn't home. His wife said, "Hey, what, you need something?" Whoops. And then when he got there, he said, "What's going on?" She was kind of crying. And then the other guy told him who we were, and he said, showed him badges. He said, "Where'd you get those? I want to get one of those." Couldn't sell him on the fact that these were real.
Yeah.
And jail was next. Crooks
That
are
last
really
one
dumb.
you did with the guy that was going potty in the shopping mall parking lot. I kept checking
I don't know
my.
where you get these, but Frank is my hero. By the
know
way.
it.
And he got mad at the security officers for
Interrupting him.
he said that I was doing my business and you interrupted me. They said, "We're trespassing. It's the mall." He said, "You can't trespass me from a mall." I said, "It's private property." No, it's not. It's open to the public. So I can basically poop and
Well, he sprayed one of the security guards with mace, didn't he?
yeah, I think
Yeah, he
That's
went to jail.
That's a bad thing to be doing. It's a long ride to the jail.
Mm.
you have. I mean, anyway, they're ridiculous.
Where do you
Okay,
find
now-
these stories?
There
They're out there.
are lawyers out there that will take a case like this. I would strongly suggest that you look at them very closely and look at their records and see if they're doing it just for, if they're looking for claim to fame, that's not a bad thing in a case like this, because that would help them tremendously. But if they're just going to be fly-by-nighters, I'd be very careful.
Yeah.
This would be, to me, again, I've been wrong. A national interest of national to me, and but I don't know. You know what I mean? You have to FOIA. They're going to have to FOIA, and they're going to fight back. You can screw around with FOIA. Believe me, I know.
Well,
but there's enough evidence to take this and have somebody look at it, a jury.
I'm going to suggest a couple of individuals take a look at the show, because the show is live, but right now, but it's also there for anybody who wants to look at it forever. I guess it's on Facebook and YouTube right now.
Mm-hmm.
They can go back and look at it. I've got some friends in the media and other places that might want to take a look at this, as they should. I don't know that the local media will. Well, anyway, they're not aggressive, and they got a lot of young people.
Well, you bring up a good point. I saw the cases where they printed his arrest, but there's no stories about
No follow up.
no follow up at all.
The places that I saw, they're not even, mostly for the most part, they're not in business anymore.
This is the follow-up today.
I know that.
Yeah.
But that's it. Unfortunately, a lot of our local media, and this is bad, has been reduced so much and it's streaming's fault, and there's just not as many people watching TV. Mm-hmm. So revenue for TV stations is way down. So they don't have the money to pay reporting staff to go out there and actually spend time looking into stuff and following up on stuff. So you end up where a lot of what you're seeing in the media is really just them repeating what was told to them.
Yeah. Except if somebody locally got a hold of this story and put it on the air, then the major news outlets would run with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I believe that would happen.
But
yeah.
We're going to reach out to somebody down in Atlanta and see what they think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this. I really think that. I met people who worked for the Creighton County Sheriff's Department that were good to people.
Mm-hmm.
I was friends with a couple of sheriff's deputies before I was arrested.
I only know two over there, the sheriff and his chief deputy.
I certainly met
current sheriff.
I certainly met people who were working. Now, I met people who were working in the jail who thought it was their job to punish all the people in the jail. But I also met people who were working in the jail who were firmly convinced that not only was that not their job, but that they were actively not supposed to do that, and that they should say something to the people who did. Mm-hmm. But I will say that if you ever really want to find out who your friends are,
go through what you did.
This is a remarkably good way to do it.
When it's all over, I was told many years ago by a good friend, he says, hold these hands up. You may have that many real friends when you really get through a situation like you've been in. Have you got more than that?
Yeah, actually I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
Amazing.
My now ex-wife believed every word that they told her, including stuff that was where it was literally just like, first, that doesn't even sound reasonable, but my former mother-in-law stuck with me. She showed up at every court date I ever had.
Good.
She was there the day my charges were dismissed in Onslow. She was there the day my charges were dismissed in Craven.
Oh, good for her.
She, I had people that I would have thought would have stuck with me through this and did not. And then I had people that, we were friends, but, I actually have a friend who the Creighton County Sheriff's Department showed up at his house to have a talk with him because he'd been to see me in the jail. They did that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Everybody who visited me in the jail got a visit from the Creighton County Sheriff's Department except for John, because they already knew John was a retired FBI agent.
Yeah, that would be a bad move.
But they showed up at his house, and he didn't live in Creighton County. And after several attempts of telling them to go away, he did not wish to speak to them. He informed them that he was going to have them arrested for trespassing if they didn't get off his property. And that's, that's one of the people who sent me books in jail, came to see me in jail. And, you really find out who the people are who not only are your friends, but who know you, truly know you. when you go through something like this.
Well, you got a good one over here.
Yes. I mean,
I got to have somebody stick by me. I want him.
yeah.
I just want in the next book.
I have a cousin who lives most of the way across the county who got kicked off Facebook multiple times for her comments on some of the news articles about me.
Really?
Yeah, she got 30-day suspensions from Facebook for
I
some
don't think
of
I've got that yet. Have I?
Yeah.
They just kicked me off for a day or two.
It wasn't, she got suspended. They suspended her for a short period the first time and then longer and longer and longer because she'd go right back to it. But it has been, I mean, you know, I've had people who have said to me, oh, I couldn't do what you went through. And I was like, you know, I mean,
You never know until you have to.
you never know until you have to. But at the same time,
Well, I'll tell you what, I've seen a lot of people break under those conditions who were innocent or definitely not as guilty as they were charged. But I've seen people break. I mean, you know, and then when they get out, the bad thing is when they get out, then they say, well, what the hell have I got to lose now? I've already been
that
punished.
happens.
So you're not going to do that.
Yeah, I've seen people. I saw people in jail who, like, they had been arrested for something and pled guilty to it, but then that had a negative effect on them on their employment and what they could, you know, what they could do, where they could live, and all that. And so then they actually did start committing crimes because they didn't have anything else they could do. This is, I really feel like some of what's going on here is really bad for the local community because they've had their stats on some stuff.
Anybody in the organizations that were on the opposite side of what you were trying to do, they reached out to say, you know, this shouldn't have happened?
No, in fact,
Nobody.
I think I've mentioned this to you. The Creighton County Sheriff's Department still has my property that they seized as evidence, even though they no longer, they don't. I mean, my charges have all been completely dismissed for over a year, and they won't give it back to me.
Why don't you go down to the sheriff's office and request to see a detective and fill out a stolen property report?
Yeah, well, the really bad part about it is
the way I work.
Sawyer was supposed to be investigating the cases in Creighton County, got a search warrant based on the cases in Creighton County, searched my house. Nothing on the search warrant said anything about firearms. He seized 3 pistols because the Onslow victim said that they'd been pistol whipped. But that wasn't his case. It wasn't on the search warrant. They still have those 3 pistols in their evidence locker and haven't returned them to me, even though based on that search warrant, he had no legal right to seize them because there was no legal reason for me not to own them. And I mean, it would be one thing if he like if I was already a convicted felon and he found those, he could seize them. If he had some reason to believe they were stolen, he could seize them. Well, none of that falls into that. He seized them, and we have communications between him and.
Were they all handguns?
All the ones, well, because the person said they'd been pistol whipped.
That's what it said.
Now, no testing was ever done on those. I mean, the only real logical, since it was pistol whipping, not shot. Though when I was arrested, I thought they were claiming I'd shot somebody because the warrant where I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon inflicting serious bodily injury, it said on it that the person had been seriously injured, those injuries being unknown, which is weird, with a pistol, with a deadly weapon, that being a pistol. So just only having the warrant to go on, I thought they were claiming I'd shot somebody. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until a long time later I found out, no, they were claiming pistol whipping. But, McNeil did point out to me that if they had seriously believed that a person had been pistol whipped with one of those pistols, they would have sent it to the state lab to have it tested, because even if you clean it, if you have pistol whipped a person with a pistol, somewhere up in there in the moving parts of it or something, you might still be able to find that person's hair, tissue, or blood. But they never did that. In the Onslow County, which it was supposedly seized like as an assist to Onslow County based on his communications with Onslow County never even sought to get in possession of them.
Okay, you probably want to go to the district attorney's office in Craven. That's where the gun is, or guns are, right?
It's at the sheriff's
Well,
department.
that's in Craven. So I'd go to.
I have called the district attorney's office and
say,
asked them to call the sheriff's department.
I'd like to get my pistols back. What day can I come next week?
Well, they have a computer, a tablet, my phone,
Put it all down there.
all of which is, I mean, it's the principle of the thing. I mean, it was a really good computer when I was arrested, so I guess technically it's still usable. The phone,
my guns are kind of a personal thing, you know.
yeah. It's at the same time, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. And this is horrible to say. I don't want a firearm that was purchased at me turning up at a crime scene.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a part of me that after this experience is really concerned that they're not giving my pistols back to me because they're already out there somewhere, because they're not actually still in the evidence locker, you know?
That's where I go to the
That
DA.
they don't want to give my pistols back to me because they don't actually have them anymore.
There's a chain of custody involved.
That would be a problem for
Yeah,
them.
that's it.
That would be a real big problem
Right.
for them.
Do you remember a number of years ago in Carteret County, the incident that happened where it turned out that there were Carteret? I mean, I think this is like almost 20 years ago now. If I'm, there was stuff out of the evidence locker, including firearms, being sold by
really?
members of the sheriff's department. Yeah, some of them went to prison over that. There was,
I remember that.
yeah, there was stuff. There was and there's been incidents of that happening around the country as well, and that never gets out of the back of my brain because I mean I legally purchased all of them from a federally licensed firearms dealer.
Go to that dealer and get copies of it because they've got
Yeah.
copies of it that you purchase it from
Right.
them. Take that and put that
Right.
in your record copies of it.
If my pistol shows up at a crime scene somewhere and that was legally purchased by me and it can be tracked back to me, I'm a little concerned that I don't know where it is anymore.
Well,
There's
the
no
thing is-
record of it being sold by me.
But the thing is, it hasn't been returned to you.
Right.
So they've got possession of it. The last person with possession of it legally was them. They better have it. And I'm sure they do. They may have to dig for it.
I mean, honestly, I think they do, but you always get that little tickle in
I
the back of your
understand.
brain, you know. Is it
Really,
really?
after 6 years, you don't trust the justice system? I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah. I have so much faith in it. At this
I'd be
point.
very suspicious, but I would want it back. First of all, it's mine.
I kept saying to everybody, coming from a federal,
Yeah.
that how did this happen? Because there's,
It should never have happened in the first place. This is the kind of crap you read about from 1950.
yeah, like when I had a case and I arrested somebody, my clock was ticking.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
yeah.
What am I doing? And the U.S. Attorney's Office would be on it because they were involved in the arrest, the paperwork. My boss would be on it. What's going on? After 6 years, almost 6 years, if I had arrested you, I would be, well, what's going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why didn't? I kind of want to know why nobody went. Hey, Mike, what's going on here?
His boss, yes, supervisor, right? Go ahead.
But
What's the status of the Kevin Smith case?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's in semi-solitary there, 47. We don't have to worry about him. He's
I mean, I had somebody who worked at the jail who they'll probably figure out who this is, but he's retired now. So what are they going to do to him? Who was a retired police officer from Virginia who told me on multiple occasions, he's like, I couldn't have done this to you. He's like, your charges would have been dismissed. He's like, I had a case where I had a really good case against the guy, but the prosecutor dragged their feet on it and the judge dismissed it because they took over a year. He's like, I don't understand what's going on with this.
Yeah.
Then there was a private investigator who was hired, who was also a retired police officer who came in and actually said, I've read your whole case file. He said, I used to be a cop. I used to work cases like this. He's like, I couldn't have got an arrest warrant for you on this stuff. I mean, when I read through that case file, I'm like, I can't charge this guy with anything.
First of all,
If
the
you remember-
credibility of the witnesses would kill me right up
Exactly.
front. I mean,
I-
right up front, I would have been like,
they couldn't put them
They
on.
want to know why cops ask victims of rape so many questions Because there are people like this out there.
Well,
That's why.
but also, I mean, the
Legitimate victims
the
of rape.
changing stories, which also, I mean, the thing with from Onslow is she had actually told Sawyer that the drug rehab sent her to the hospital because she was bleeding so profusely that they sent her to the hospital for treatment of those injuries. Remember, the hospital, the urgent care and the hospital found no injuries. They did drug test her at the urgent care, and she was negative for LSD. But everything else on the drug test was positive.
I don't think you can test for LSD. I got to go back in my brains back.
I think it was LSD. There was one thing she was
That's
negative
one
for,
of them. I mean,
but all the other things on the drug test
that was one
positive.
of the biggies that they were. I'll have to double check.
That's
Reliability of witnesses. You're right, and we discussed it at the time. There was one case. Your defense attorney, the female, I forget her name, told me that she watched one of your accusers on a video bail hearing. And not on your case, on another case. And she said on the record that she was so high on heroin at times that she couldn't remember.
Duh.
So, and these were the types of witnesses and the types of statements they made. How could they then get up and testify against you? The question your attorney would say, well, you said you were so high on heroin you didn't remember.
Well, the one from Onslow County where I was talking about the bleeding profusely and all, you have to also keep in mind that her mother picked her up and drove her 4.5 hours to a rehab in Virginia without noticing all this profuse bleeding and the head injury. And I mean,
And would not have stopped to take care of her daughter.
and didn't take her to a medical facility, like just drove her to the rehab and dropped her off at the rehab. There's nothing, there's so many red flags where you go through it and you're just like,
Mom knows
this is
best.
impossible. This couldn't have happened. But there's also there's stuff that should be in the case file that is not. That's some of which is legally required to be there for like witness identifications. They're supposed to be videotaped. They're supposed to do a written statement about how confident they are in their identification. The person who administers it is supposed to fill out a paperwork saying, I did a photo array with such and such person, and they identified such and such person. And none of that is actually in the case file that was turned over to us. And the only actual evidence we have that any of these people actually identified me is Mike Sawyer's 27-page Word document where he says they did.
They couldn't present that in court because I've done photo lineups.
Yeah.
And you have to initial, you have to have a 302, who was there, what they saw.
The 404B hearing that we had on Monday. Yeah, McNeil wasn't finished. We weren't doing jury selection the next day because he had that was the first motion that he had. Motion to about the identifications, motions about witnesses that were never even identified. Like the person who called 911 from the Comfort Suites in James City. We didn't get the 911 phone call transcript. That person was not identified. Mike Sawyer spoke to hotel staff. That person was not identified. Mike Sawyer actually went back and got security footage, which, full disclosure, I was at the Comfort Suites on October the 16th, 2016. He actually released still shots from it to the media before I was ever even arrested. I never saw it. I wasn't watching WITN. What he didn't mention, which came up when McNeil was talking to him, the assault was supposed to have occurred at 3:00 in the afternoon. The still shots he had from the security camera video showed me there at 7:30 p.m., arriving at 7:30 p.m. That
Maybe
right
the
off
clocks were off. They did set the clock.
Yeah, that's okay. One good thing about my past work experience is I can tell you that's not possible because
All the computer.
it's all on a computer and it is synchronized with a network server system. Probably the one they would use would be the one out of DC. And if it's if it's going to be off, it's going to be about off by the amount of transmission delay in the fiber optics between DC and here, which would be on the millisecond level.
Yep.
So that's just not possible. It is not possible for that to have been off. And that was one of the issues that McNeil raised. He was like, what's the times, which they didn't turn that stuff over to us. We knew it existed because it had been released to the media, but he didn't put it in his case file. So we didn't get that until the day of the hearing. Mike Sawyer, and we've been asking for it. The day of the hearing, it actually gets presented to us, like in court. John was there when they brought that up on. That was the first time it had actually been presented to us. I mean, it starts playing and showing me walking in the entrance. I'm not wearing clothing that even vaguely matches the actual description given in the audio recording by the alleged victim. I have hair. No one would have described me as skinny. I'm 6'1", so I guess I am technically taller than the average person. But I mean, this person described shoes, pants, shirt, eye color, baldness, everything. I didn't have on the same, not even color of shoes. They said the person was wearing bright blue athletic shoes and I had on black flip-flops. But I didn't have on the same color pants, did they claim? I didn't have on the same color shirt. I had hair.
Minor stuff.
Other than that, and the time on it, we didn't even get, we did, like McNeil, when McNeil said, what's the time stamp down there say? 1930. The judge was like, yeah, I don't think I need to see any more of this. That was, we were done at that point, I think.
Isn't it always amazing where stuff like that happens and you don't think it's going to happen because everything leading up to this, people ignore evidence and facts and circumstances. And the judge says, wait a minute, there's like a 6-hour difference in time and description.
Yeah.
And he says something to the effect that can't happen.
Discrepancies are what you look for.
But my point is, in this case, it has been so botched and facts ignored. And it's the same thing with this Navy thing. We have the Navy's own admission, and they won't do anything.
See, the thing there with you is, yeah, we can call it botched. You would like to think it's botched because somebody's inept at doing their job. But I will think that maybe somebody's doing something they intentionally, with malice aforethought, they should not be doing.
And it
For
happened.
a reason.
It happened more than once over 6 years. Yeah, that's the other issue.
But this is,
I don't think it's botched.
this is the thing also, though, with that security camera video. The only security camera video ever given to us was interior.
Mhm.
I don't know of a business like that has cameras all over the interior of their building and doesn't have any in the parking lots. So what I honestly think happened is Mike Sawyer looked at those security tapes and he got license plate numbers off of cars in the parking lot. And he got my license plate number. He ran my license plate, and my license plate was in that report that the Virginia State Police put on. I forget the name of the like interstate database of their abortive attempt to investigate this claim. Which wasn't even, it's really weird. I mean, yeah, they were called, but then they got no information and didn't get talked to. I think he got that license plate and he said to himself, oh, well, he was involved in this case from Virginia, so this has to be my guy.
I have a question about your phone. You said they still have your phone. I see you wear a smartwatch.
Yeah.
No doubt you have a smartphone and you had one then. Did they ever run your phone through any tests like Celebrite or some other company to track where you were on those dates?
No.
I mean, they could tell you when you went
if you-
upstairs, when you came down, where you were
If
at.
you're, I want you to think about this. You're Mike Sawyer. You have, by this point, which I think he thought that Onslow County case was a good case.
Right.
I think he thought that. I think he thought that since that was a good case, it wasn't going to matter how good all the other cases were. But I also think that he didn't try to get the medical records of this person who claimed to have been pistol whipped in Onslow County.
Right.
He didn't try to get those medical records until a month after I was arrested. He had her fill out a medical release form to get her medical records. He goes to try and send that to the hospital whose name she put on the form, and he discovers that nowhere in the entire state of Virginia does that hospital exist. Back and says, this is not the hospital you went to. What hospital did you go to? So she fills out another one. The same thing happens because she's making up a hospital name to put on the form.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that had to be the moment where he probably said to himself, I'm screwed, aren't I? Oh, dear God. He eventually did get her medical records by asking the mother what rehab she took her to, calling the rehab, asking them where they would have sent a person. They give him the urgent care names. The urgent care gives him the hospital name. He gets that. He gets the medical records. He didn't get the medical records until like 2 months after I was arrested. If not when she made up names of hospitals, definitely when he got those medical records, he knew he was in trouble. From that moment on, nothing he did was anything other than, how do I cover this? So seeking any kind of like location data or anything on my phone, by that point in time, I think he knew if I do that, it's going to disprove all my other cases. And if those cases get totally disproven, we can't even try to where there's smoke, there's fire.
If you had had a good defense attorney, he could have ordered those, and he could have.
Well,
shown
the
it to
other
courts.
problem we have with it is, I think
It's crazy.
every single one of them claimed that their phone was stolen. Eventually, claimed their phone was stolen,
Mm-hmm.
which has an interesting. When you can't remember the phone number on that phone, has an interesting effect.
Exactly.
They can't prove whether or not my phone was ever close to their phone, even if they figure out where my phone was, because they have no way of tracking that phone because they don't know what they can't remember their phone number that they had on that phone. That they also said was stolen, even though one of them said, if you look on my phone, and this was actually in something they wrote down, if you look on my phone, you'll see text messages that I think are from this person. He stopped looking for real evidence the second he realized. That's why he never sent the rape kit. He never sent the rape kit, and he never sent, when he did, I think somebody made him send the rape kit to the state lab.
Yep. Too late.
But he didn't send a sample for me with it because he didn't want that to get run. He didn't want any evidence that further disproved his case. So he didn't look for stuff that logically you would think, if I get this and
A match.
it's a match, I got him.
Yeah.
But I already know it's not gonna be.
But if it's not, and then I've really got evidence to prove that it is not, then I just say, oh, wow. I
think
for the defense.
I think by that point, he already knew it wouldn't be.
Cameras, what was this place?
Comfort Suites.
Okay, they didn't have any cameras outside?
I think they did.
8 minutes and 36 seconds after 7 o'clock this morning, Eastern time. Where were you?
8 minutes and 37. Dunkin'
36
Donuts,
seconds.
I think.
No, you weren't.
After 7.
There you were.
Oh, here? Yeah. Okay.
I got cameras here.
I forgot what time I got here.
all over the place, inside and outside.
Yeah. It's
This is a home.
I think they have cameras, and I think he got my license plate from the cameras.
Likely.
And he ran my license plate. My license plate appears on that report that the Virginia State Police filed, and he decided I had to be his guy because of that.
Yeah.
And everything he did from that moment forward was, well, to this day, we don't know. Like the Onslow County victim was in the Carteret County Jail and then got transferred to the Craven County Jail. And we still don't know why, even though that was well before I was arrested. I think he had them transferred
Over there in advance.
over there. But he says he took no statements from anyone other than the Comfort Suites victim before that date. And I think he did, but I think he ripped them up and wrote new.
Did you see these victims, so-called victims, did they see you physically? Could they identify? I mean, they saw you in jail, right? Did you ever cross paths with them?
In the entire time I was in the jail,
Yeah.
They keep the males and the females totally separated. In the entire time I was in the jail, there were 8 occasions when I actually saw female inmates.
Okay, so
One of them was when I was going into the lawyer meeting room to meet with my attorney, and a female client of hers was passing out of there. The other 7 times it was always victims.
okay,
Which that seems like an amazing coincidence.
it does too. I don't believe on them. Okay, let's do a kind of a summation here. For a lot of folks out there may just be tuning in and say, "Ooh, this is interesting. What's going on?" First of all, gentleman sitting over here, he is Kevin Smith.
Mhm.
He is one of 141. I thought he was 144. 141 Kevin Smiths in the North Carolina Department of Corrections database.
I said, I knew Kevin Smith.
He's one of them.
Yes.
He was arrested 2016, multiple charges accusing you of vile things. And he sits here today a free man, but he spent a long time. He spent as much time in jail as a lot of people convicted of those same crimes will spend in prison once they're convicted. Do you understand that?
Yes, I know that.
I've known people for second-degree murder out in 6 or 7 years. You understand that?
Yes, I know that.
Something's wrong with a system that allowed that to occur. Okay, so, but you're free. You're free now. After all of those charges that were brought against you in 2016 and whatever period of time thereafter, you're walking around a free man. Got your rights, but you got blemishes on you.
Mm-hmm.
John, let's sum it up.
I'm going to emphasize the Constitution
Yes.
and the 6th and the 8th Amendment violations on excessive bond, cruel and unusual punishment, and speedy trial. To me, in researching cases, now I am not an attorney, but in researching cases, and I've been doing this on your particular thing for a while, it appears to me that your constitutional rights under this amendment were violated. And that is concrete. I mean, and how do you prove that? The rest of the stuff that you have been telling us, in terms of the facts of the case and the witnesses and the test and the lack of test and all that reinforces and supports the violation of the constitutional amendments. So I would hang my hat on that.
That's probably what needs to be done. You're going to have to do something. You can't just be floundering around out here working at McDonald's or wherever. Nothing wrong with them, but that's not where you need to be at age 50 plus.
What are you doing now?
I actually agreed with my employer that I wouldn't say.
Okay, that's
Fine.
fine.
I understand.
What type of work?
Manual labor?
He might get pressure. The employer might get pressure.
Yeah, it's
How could you have
I
this?
don't even.
All right,
wanna-
He's innocent.
I don't even.
Yeah,
but
people are.
I
that
understand that.
that doesn't. I mean,
We'll
I
let-
actually agreed with my employer that I would, and I
I
had
don't blame
every
you.
intention
Well,
before
let
they
me
said
ask
anything
you this
not
instead
to.
of that. Things easier on you now?
Well, it's a lot easier than being
There
in
you go.
jail.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I'm not working in my chosen profession. I mean, and it's. I have. I mean, there's, you see a police car behind you, and you don't. Used to be you just like, okay, it's a police car. Now you got that. Well, because the other thing they have my wallet. I was released from the jail, but I effectively, my wife divorced me while I was in jail. She also appears to have been somewhat selective when friends of mine showed up to get my property and what she actually turned over. Initially, my former mother-in-law was doing it, but then she got injured, and then my ex-wife, now ex-wife, took over. As near as I can figure, she only turned over to me everything she thought couldn't be sold at a yard sale. I was released from jail with no identification because they have my wallet and it was expired, but they have my driver's license and they have my social security card in my wallet. It took me about 6 months to succeed in getting enough paperwork together and stuff to actually get a driver's license. And then once I got a driver's license, people gave me because they're like, Grandpa, how fast are you driving? And I'm like, 55. They're like, we're going the speed limit? And I said, yes, we are, because I ain't getting pulled over. I mean,
Sure.
like people be actively honking at me as I'm going down 70 because I'm going the exact speed limit.
Oh, yes.
And I'm literally the only vehicle on the road that's actually going the speed limit. It really annoys me when a police officer flies by me and he doesn't have his lights on. It's like, I'm going 60. He just went past me so fast, it took me a second to realize it was a police car. His lights aren't on. That really annoys me. I mean, I lost a lot of stuff I lost family heirlooms. I lost stuff that's just like utterly and totally irreplaceable. So it just is. And you hear the stories.
It gripes your butt, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay.
I mean, and it was all about something that if a person had just done normal, good police work, never would have happened. Arrest and then investigate is not how this is supposed to work. Arrest, investigate, realize you arrested the wrong person, and then see if you can cover up the fact that you arrested the wrong person. Is definitely not how this is supposed to work, but that is without a doubt what happened in my case, and I'm afraid what has happened in a bunch of other people's cases.
The last thing I'm going to say, and I keep getting back to this one thing, if you can prove that they used other Kevin Smith's arrest records to justify the bond, it's game, set.
That's step one.
Yeah.
Well,
that's game, set, and match. That's it. Everything after that.
I think even with that, there's no way he didn't tell that magistrate this person had serious bodily injuries. When by that point in time, that was the Comfort Suites one. He already had that person's medical records in his possession. He knew that wasn't true.
You know that he put his hand on the Bible in that magistrate's office and he raised his right hand.
Swore under
all
oath
the
under
stuff under
penalty
here
of
on this
perjury.
piece of paper, everything that you told me is true to the best of your knowledge. Yes, Your Honor.
Under penalty of perjury. It says that on all the forms.
That is in the magistrate's office. If he swore that the information that he was giving the magistrate was accurate and truthful to the best of his knowledge, there's always that thing, to the best of his knowledge, and he lied about it, and he lied on the witness stand, I'm sorry.
Well, and then the other thing,
He's had 19 years, and I think over there at the sheriff's office right now, 20 he can retire with
Wow.
benefits.
What's that?
With benefits.
If you're a federal, you could take a buyout. Oh, no, that ended last night.
I think a judge ordered a continuance on that buyout, but
He
Yeah.
doesn't have that.
I think the way
Yeah.
the buyout is structured,
That's for
that
federal.
doesn't change. Yeah, but that doesn't change your retirement. You get 8 months of pay, but I think if you're not already eligible for retirement,
Yeah, it
you wouldn't get
depends. If you
federal
retire, if you're
retirement.
50 and you retire at 20, you're going to have a reduced
Yeah.
retirement no matter
Yeah.
what.
So
Stay till you're 55.
that, but
Well, I'm sure that Rayford would want to have you back if something happens as a result of this show,
Yes.
or if nothing else to update.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I won't ask you for your number. I'll reach out to John. He can reach you.
Yes.
okay.
Actually, I've got your number, but
We know how to get you. We know how to find you. We'll just go ask Craven County.
Well, let's
That was
hope
a
that.
bad Bad joke.
I say if you can get
I don't live in Graham County.
if you can get if there was the right reporter, hard hitting local reporter, they would file an FOI for all of these records in Craven County and in Oslo County, and they're all available. And, if Joe Smith down here goes and files for one of them, yes, they have the same right that everybody else has to
How
get them.
many would you actually get though?
But
I was thinking that they're not going to.
Yeah,
If they've done all this so far, I'm not accusing them of anything.
But if a reporter does it, and particularly if when I used to do that stuff, they always knew that I knew more than I was asking for.
well, but
And now go ahead and lie to me.
I mean-
I'll just give you that opportunity.
frequently when there's a case going on and reporters are doing Freedom of Information Acts, the law enforcement agency will, their excuse they fall back on is, it's an ongoing investigation. What excuse could they, other than, oops, we lost that?
Nope.
What
Doesn't fly.
what excuse could they give to a reporter for saying we're not going to honor your Freedom of Information Act request?
Because the reporter doesn't know how to ask it.
Well, it asks for preservation too. There's a document you can to preserve the records under.
Well, but I mean, shoot.
Well, that's the case I'm
That's
following
banks.
in Massachusetts. They've put preservation orders out, and this was done during the first trial 2 years ago. But yet, when the defense is going back, as other stuff is coming uncovered now, guess what? They don't have it anymore. Somehow, it mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
all right. Well,
Okay, I gave you a name over there,
yeah.
and I'll tell you more about him as soon as we quit.
All right.
All right. Kevin, thank you. Good luck. And this is not going to be our only chat.
No, best of luck.
Even though it was a long one, but it's not going to be our only chat.
All right.
For you folks out there listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for putting up with us. And on Monday, we'll be back. I have no clue what we got next week, but
I don't know. After today,
there will
I
be
don't
some
think
follow-ups.
anything can compare.
Yeah.
And
Goodness.
I haven't got the latest information on the
Yes.
missing plane up there. Nothing new yet.
Missing
This
I
is
just
barely daylight.
checked. I just checked. and
Alaska.
They're still searching. No new news.
Another plane.
Civilian plane or military?
Civilian, 10 souls on board, one pilot. It's a small plane in Alaska doing its thing. 9 passengers, one pilot.
Yes.
Coming in, they said, you got to stall because we got to plow the runway again. It's snow and
Not
blizzard
engine
conditions.
stall, John.
Not
What's
engine
that?
stall. Not engine stall.
Not engine stall. They
You got to
took-
stall coming in. Just
Yeah,
take your
yeah.
time. So he was circling and then he disappeared.
My flight instructor made me solo in Western Pennsylvania with snow on the runway.
Is that right?
Yeah,
He didn't like you, did he?
it was a she, and
She didn't like you.
No,
No, I understand now.
no, she was fantastic.
Oh, solo. You said
She-
solo.
Just solo, yeah. What they do is they don't tell you when you're going to solo.
Uh-huh.
So she took me up for some, landings on the snow and ice patches on this, small airport.
No, I don't land under these conditions. I go south.
No. What she did is she hopped out of the seat and said, "You're soloing." So yeah, no.
I got to go to the bathroom. I'm not feeling well. We'll do this another day when it's warm.
It's just too many
You
ladies.
could always fall back on the Onslow County excuse and suddenly develop pneumonia.
No, I did it.
Pneumonia, to be honest with you, since I know a bunch of people have been through it, including me. I
lot
was
of
felt
people
great the
sick
day
right
before,
now.
and then middle of the night that night, it hit. It was not good. It was what it ended up being walking pneumonia, but I don't know why they call it that. I could barely walk.
Walking pneumonia.
Yeah, you ever heard that?
I heard of it, but it's
It's a misnomer. I will tell you that. So, anyway, okay. We will see you the next go round, no doubt about it. Good luck, and we will
Best
stay in
of
touch,
luck,
and
yeah.
you can do the same.
Definitely want to
John's.
follow this one.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We will see you on Monday morning. Thanks for bearing with us, and I hope you've picked up something, because we have. And those of you who are replaying this and looking at it now, oh my,
yeah, oh my.
maybe you want to have some comments on Monday.
Yeah.
And if some folks that want some more information, you've got our Facebook Messenger, and my email is very simple, rayfordbrown@gmail.com.
If you have any similar stories,
And if you've got anything else like this,
Yeah.
particularly under the same situations, same people, same channel, give us a call. We'd like to hear about it. Okay? Because it doesn't happen once.
Yeah, this was not his first rodeo.
We don't believe it. I don't believe in coincidences.
Yeah.
Okay. See you Monday, y'all. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there. your live and local Real Talk, where we are always awake. We ain't never going to be woke. See you Monday.